It is 6:30 now. Do we want to begin or do we want to wait a few more minutes for people to come in?
Question is whether we have a quorum or not. I can't see because of the agenda.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I think most of the committee are here. I think there are eight of us here.
Okay, then let's start. Okay, this is the Landmarks Committee meeting of September 16th. We're here to review 6 applications. We'll consider them for the purpose of context and appropriateness. And we will start with the first application after Kevin explains all the intricacies of how to interact.
Okay, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you'll notice that you are currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for the committee co-chairs, David and Anthony, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you are calling in on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you need to go to the participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. We will start with first application, 116 East 78th Street. Is the applicant here? Yes, okay. This is Upper East Side to start. I've got to read it first before we can start. This is the Upper East Side Historic District, a neo-Georgian building designed by Lee Harris and constructed in 1909. Application is to legalize excavation in the rear yard. So if the applicant is ready and can share the screen.
The applicant of record is Plain Space DPC. If you could unmute him, that'd be great.
Great. Hello, everyone. Would I be able to share my screen?
Please.
Okay, great. Okay, is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. My name is Mark Alberton. I'm the current architect for the project at 116 East 78th Street. And the application is essentially to request the legalization of the as-built rear courtyard and excavation in the rear of the property because of a clerical error and some confusion over approvals in 2019. The project was not reviewed at that time by Landmarks. And so we wanted to present the project as it's been designed and as it's been built. The project essentially started in 2011. And just one minor correction, the architect Lee Harris started this project in 2011, not in 1909, as it may seem in the original summary of the title of the work. So it was started by Lee Harris in 2011, and it was essentially just completed this past, I guess, about 6 to 8 months ago. So it's been under construction for 13 years. It began as a family house when the owners had 3 small children, and now all the children are essentially out of college, and one of them has moved back in with her own 2 children. So it still remains a family house, and I believe so will remain so for many years to come. I started on the project in 2017 in November. So all of that history from 2011 to 2007 happened prior to my time. This is a local map of the area. It's in between, I'm sure as everyone knows, between 77th, 78th Street, Lexington, and Park Avenue. The courtyard is part of the central area, which I have this next photo. It's really not a green space per se in terms of like the classical green space of the New York City pattern, as it would be in the 40s and 50s on the east side. It's essentially chopped up into the properties, and each property has their own backyard, their own courtyard. There are some larger buildings here. To the east is the Allen Stevenson School down the street on 78th Street. There's the Church of Christ Scientist on 77th Street, which abuts the property. And there's some other buildings, in Northwell facility here that is across the street from Lenox Hill. So there are some. It's a mix of buildings in this area, and again, the rear portion of the properties have that mixture sort of characterized in what they've done. Sorry, let me get to the next. Okay, so here are some overall photos of our courtyard of 116 East 78th Street, which is this one here. I don't know if you can see the hand, but it is the one that is in the center in the lower photo. The 118 is on the left-hand side, then it goes to 120, 114 on the right side. So you see the pattern that is here. The violation that was received was essentially for the excavation of the courtyard, of our courtyard, subterranean excavation for a mechanical room, and because of a rule at the landmarks that within 5 feet of the rear property line, there has to be a planted area. So this was not reviewed by landmarks back in 2019 as part of the amendment of the project. So this is the area again in drawing format. So in the red square, we have our courtyard, and you'll notice that on the east and west side, we have these planted areas. They're planters, they're 3-foot deep planters, and they're meant for very tall trees, and they run from the south property line up to the building. And the courtyard, as you see, is paved. It's paved with a small area in the back that was meant to be a fountain in the future, but during the construction was canceled by the client. But the trough had been already built at that time. And below, on the number 2 drawing here, below is the mechanical space, which serves as mechanical equipment for the cellar space. There's a spa, there's a steam room, there's various elements here that are served by the use of this space below the courtyard. Here's a section of the building, and you'll see the mechanical space here, which extends all the way back to the property line. And to note, the courtyard level is exactly the same that it's been since 2000 or since 1909. So that level and that rear surface has not changed at all since the building was built in 1909. So that remains as is, and there's a line showing the essential terrain and the elevation of the land around there. This is a detail of the courtyard. So the mechanical equipment space here, like I said, services the cellar of the house. Now, the violation, I believe, is about removing a portion of the mechanical crawl space and removing the area that is on the courtyard to bring it back to a planted area, and the excavation below the mechanical or below the courtyard would have to be removed. And I think this would be very difficult to achieve for many reasons. For one, the house is now completed, and again, after 13 years, it's been a very long wait and a very long process to get it to this point. The living spaces are developed on the ground floor, and to get any kind of equipment back into this area would be very destructive. The family would have to move again. They would have to relocate and spend the 8 to 12 months away from their home to redo this area back there. So that would be very, very difficult for them. It's also the agreement, there is an agreement with the neighbors now, after all of this time, to essentially have, you know, a respect of their privacy and property boundaries. The intent is to support a friendly environment within this neighborhood and within the block. And so I think to cause demolition and destruction back here would really be against that agreement. It's taken a long time, like I said, to do the project. And so, you know, as an option to remediate this, I have an idea that I wanted to present at the end of the presentation. Again, these are just some finished photos of the courtyard, the planters on the east and west side. The back wall here abuts the Church of Christ garden there, the 118 and 114 side to the left and right. And you'll notice, you know, the plantings on the 114 side are starting to encroach over the wall into our into the courtyard of the 116, which is something I think if we do remove this area and put plantings, it's something that would be going against possibly this agreement, because there would be roots, there would be portions like this that would actually encroach over this property line, which the agreement is meant to protect. Again, here from the top, you'll see the 118 side from the left and the 114 on the right, and ours in the center here. And the 118 side is fully paved with the wall in the back. They've placed some planters here, you know, to introduce more green into the courtyard space. And this is from the balcony of our building, looking out. His previous photo when there was a tent here for some construction equipment, but you'll see the Church of Christ Scientist courtyard in the back, which is actually very nice. It's a beautiful garden. And then we have this building to the left of that, this hospital building, which comes up very close to the rear property line, and does not have a lot of green space as part of the building composition. This is a view from 77th Street across from the Church of Scientist fence here, from looking through in the winter time, and you'll see the building in the back here, the new building. And this is in the springtime taken, so it's fully dense and fully green space looking into the courtyard back there. This is through the fence back towards the building. And this again is from within the courtyard and the garden space back here, looking back at the building. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background as to what approvals have been achieved through landmarks up to this point, which gives some context of why the subterranean space, it was always there. This is in the original building from 1909 to 2011. Basically, the courtyard was partially green. There was a planted area in back and a hardscape courtyard there. This is a section of the original building, which shows this area in the back. Now, in 2011, when the project was developed, the courtyard was significantly changed with planting around the perimeter and a lawn area below. And underneath that, in the excavated space, there was a spa, and it actually went down 2 floors. So there was a subcellar and a cellar that was excavated, with the courtyard space having this planted area and a skylight going down to the 2 cellar levels below. This is a close-up, and again, you'll see there's some green space here and a green hedge that was designed, but the excavation is quite robust going down those 2 floors. This is a 2015 amendment to the original 2011 plan, again, approved by landmarks. The stamps are there. The excavation was expanded to the southern property line, so it was a full build out of the rear area underneath the courtyard. And at that point, I believe once they were working on this, again, this was back in 2015, the project was stopped. It was put on hold because there were some issues with the adjacent neighbors. And then this this iteration is in 2017. This is before I took over as the architect of record. They revised the courtyard in the back to be, again, per the 2011 perimeter with planting around the side and a surface paver or hardscape in the center. But the change was that they removed the excavation below, although they retained the footings, which needed to be excavated. But it's essentially a slab on earth with the footings below. And the other change here came as the subcellar was removed, and now it's only a single level of the cellar going up to that courtyard, which again remains at the original level of the building from 1909. And this is a close-up of that. You'll see there was a green hedge that was meant to go around the perimeter of the courtyard. This is now our 2019 project, and I can talk about that a little bit because there's some confusion surrounding that. But essentially, again, it shows the level of the courtyard, which has always remained the same, and the mechanical crawl space below, an idea of a remediation, which would be planters and a hedge, which follows the original plan of the courtyard. And this is a fountain. A fountain could be brought back as well as a remediation as another option to complete that requirement of the rear green space. Again, some photographs. The neighbor to the east seemingly complied with this requirement by some planters and some trees, green space there, which, you know, again, we have these on the east and west side, which will grow, and there could be some planters as well as an option, as something to make to respect the rule from landmarks that the green space has to go up to the southern property line, which is something that we want to do. And this is just a reference letter showing the approvals, 2011. This was 2012 here, 2017. So throughout these iterations and amendments of the project, it was always approved. And in 2019, when we submitted our drawings, we received a building department approval, but until this year, when the temporary certificate of occupancy was being applied for, we realized, and it was brought up to us, that the landmark application from 2019 was not achieved. So even though the project was, we submitted to the expediter to follow through the process, we received the approval back a few weeks later with the DOB stamps, and so the project continued. It was in the thick of the construction period, and so the drawings were distributed and everyone continued. So there was a little bit of a misstep there, and I do take responsibility for that as the architect of record. I should have known back at that time that we should have had all the approvals before proceeding, but there was some confusion about our application and what was reviewed and what was approved at that time, because we had, well, I can let me stop there. Seema, do you have anything you would like to add to the application?
Yes, hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, good evening. Thank you for seeing us so late in the day. Yes, what I'd like to add here is what happened in this scenario. I mean, the excavation was originally approved back in 2017. It was approved in 2015. It was approved in 2011 when it was originally filed, or even prior. What happened was that when, as Mark mentioned earlier, during 2019, the owner hired Municipal as the owner's rep and expediter. The owner's rep hired or the owner's hired. And Mark had sent everything over to the expediters to file with Landmark and to achieve Landmark's approval, because at the end of the day, it was approved prior, and then they took it out and then they brought it back. And that's where basically it was towards the end of 2019 that COVID got involved and got hit, and offices had to get closed down, and we all the government agencies closed down. The virtual system was not working or ready to be worked. We were emailing. We did send out a few, Mark did send out a few emails. And because of, you couldn't have an open office paying rent without bringing in any income at that point. So Mark had to relocate. He had to do whatever he had to do. And I guess somewhere in between all the letters and documents, this particular job was not seen through for an approval from Landmark. Mark was under the assumptions that it was, the municipal expediting, they were under assumptions it was. Ends up that when municipal went to get a final CFO or a TCO from the Department of Building, that is when we found out that the excavation was never approved by Landmark.
I think we've heard the history. We're going to talk about it from the point of view of context and appropriateness. We understand what you've been through. I think it's enough already. So if you want to make any more comments about the context and the appropriateness of what you're recommending, we'll take it from there.
We would like to get an approval for the as-built condition.
Thank you. And Mark, do you want to say anything about the as-built condition beyond what you've already said?
No, I think I think I have explained it
Okay.
enough thoroughly.
All right. Thank you for, I think it was a good presentation. And we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone who has any comments.
If anyone from the public has any comments, please raise your virtual hand. Seeing none right now.
All right, we'll go to the committee and we'll start with Elizabeth.
Well, first I have a question. One of the pictures there seemed to show a tent in the rear yard. What's that?
So that tent was when the project was completing construction. It was basically holding some equipment and some materials for the construction. It has since been removed and there's no tent any longer. So that was just a temporary structure there. Yeah, that's gone.
Yeah. Thank you. From the approval point of view, it seems to be what you showed as what's done, not unlike other rear yards. And they're quite unusual because it isn't a green space back there, so it's hard to judge what this would be. But I think that it looks quite pleasant to me, and I can't imagine what is the original. So I think I could approve this, but I will wait for the comments of my colleagues.
Gail?
I have no questions.
Alita? No, sorry, Michelle. Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. You went into an explanation of the excavation underneath, which yielded steam room and exercise room or whatever. Am I correct in saying that basically has nothing to do with what we're looking at now?
On the surface level, no, it's all subsurface. It's all below the courtyard here.
Right. So you're not asking us to pass comment or judgment on that excavation at this presentation. Am I correct that you're only asking us to look at the aesthetics of what's on the screen right now? I want to make sure I understand what you're asking us to do. Are we just dealing with what we're looking at right now?
It's two-part. It's the excavation, which was listed as the violation from landmarks, and the area that is within the 5 feet of the rear property line. Those two elements are the as-built condition, which need the legalization.
So the excavation, while it's not visible to the street, it doesn't have an aesthetic impact on this. It's just whether or not that construction had the proper licensing at the time, and you're seeking to grandfather that in now?
Yes.
Okay, so on that point alone, is there any indication that aside from the fact that it was built without the proper approval, is there any indication that it has violations on it now? Just the underneath excavated part, not the visual that we're looking at.
No,
Is it in
there are no
violation?
violations. No, I'm sorry to interrupt. There are no violations. We received the building department approval for that excavation. There was a sequence of excavation drawing that was submitted and approved. And so it was built, and the inspector came and reviewed the built condition with the approved plans. So other than the landmark issue of that excavation, there are no other violations that we're talking about.
So from the Department of Buildings point of view, that's legal construction as it stands now, and you're seeking to legalize it with respect to the landmarks. Now, the visual, the public part of this, or the part that we can see, you're talking about some legalization of excavation within 5 feet from the rear wall. And is that supposed to be a planter? Is that dirt that we're looking at, that rectangle box?
That rectangle was meant to be a fountain, which was part of the original plan of that area, but expanded. The landmark requirements, and I'm not quite sure if it applies to this application, but there is a requirement from the landmark rules that states that within 5 feet of the property line, the rear yard property line, there should be green space. So this is the area that landmarks has said needs to be approved and legalized, because we don't have that green space as strictly required by the landmark rules.
Okay, I understand that. And now your applicant doesn't want the fountain there anymore anyway, I think you stated.
Well, she said that she didn't want it built during the construction, but I think at this point that we're open to something that will remediate the requirement from landmarks to comply, whether it's planters similar to what's on the 118 property there on the left, or a fountain, or some sort of gesture towards the landmarks requirement there, that it needs to be something that that complies with the spirit of the landmark rule.
Okay, so from my point of view, maybe the committee, but I'll speak for myself. I know that landmarks has approved fountains in the past, actually have approved them on the staff level. I'm not saying whether or not I supported that. However, they have approved it. So from my point of view and design, you're seeking to legalize what is. I personally don't mind if it's green or if it's a fountain. So how are we to phrase our resolution if we were to approve? What specifically are we approving? Are we just saying as is? Or are we saying,
Michelle,
what are we doing?
we are saying as is.
Okay, that's my question.
Futures,
Okay.
we're looking at it
Thank
as
you.
is.
That's my question. Thanks very much.
Alita?
Hi, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. My primary, or should I say principal issue, is about the principle here, which is that there was no compliance with landmarks for whatever reason. And I appreciate that you say that you'll take responsibility, but really, what does it mean in this context? The other question I have is, there seems to be an agreement with the neighbors that you think should take priority. It sounded like over what landmarks requires, which I don't really understand. You said it kind of in passing about the greenery coming from 114 over your fence and how requiring you to, or the owner to comply with landmarks would somehow interfere with that agreement. So I don't really understand that. And I really am having a little bit of trouble with the concept that you just want to give a nod to what the Landmarks Preservation Commission requires. There are already not enough instances for me of landmarks requiring compliance or requiring a certain aesthetic. And so the idea of giving a nod, I find somewhat troubling. So my inclination is to just say no here. But I'd really like to know a little bit more about what you mean that any effort to require compliance would interfere with the neighbor's agreement. It sounds like there was some trouble. Was it from the excavation? Is it from the design? Because it sounds kind of unusual, and asking us to say no because of interference is, for me anyway, unless my recollection is wrong, is extremely unusual.
Well, I think that the agreement with the neighbors is something that is independent apart from landmarks. If this area were to be changed and to be demolished and made completely to the requirement of landmarks, it would be extremely disruptive, both to the family that lives here, to the neighbors, to the school that uses the street in front of 78th Street for their lunchtime recess.
Mark,
I don't mean to say that it's...
Mark, we're taking too much time already. You've been through that. We all understand that it's disruptive. Landmarks takes precedence. Let's
And
go
so
to the next.
I intend to vote no on this, but thank you for your attention.
Sarah?
Hi, thank you for this presentation. David, is it okay if I ask Mark to share the ideas for the space that he mentioned earlier in the presentation?
It's unnecessary. We have 6 items tonight, and we're way behind schedule with this very small project. He's already talked about fountains. He's already talked about planters. I don't see any reason to take any more time. And we're not voting on futures. We're voting on what's there today.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you, Mark.
John?
My inclination would be, this doesn't look terrible, and just leave well enough alone and move on. I mean, it sounds like such a huge disruption to go and correct this to not only the owner, but all of the neighbors. So my inclination would be to say, just go ahead and approve it.
Jane?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I must say it's a question of principle with me as well. So I kind of support Alita's perspective, and I'm going to vote no on the application. What's the point of having a landmarks commission in the first place? Thank you.
Marco?
Thank you. Well, the foundation, I think, I don't find a problem at all. That is done, and that's it. It means I feel confident to recommend the approval. What made me concerned is the regulation to comply with the rules of landmarks, which is required. And thank you, the applicant, to let me know. They require a 5 feet planting area. And I think that part is missing in that part, in this application, and that made me concerned. The other part I think is perfectly fine. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Thank you. I'm going to echo both Alita and Jane's comments here. It's not even about the aesthetics, about the design. It's the principle of the matter, and this to me feels egregious. So I'm going to vote no.
Anthony and David?
Okay. I agree with John. I think that for this this is fine. And I think it is, yeah, I think it's fine, and I'm going to vote to approve it. I understand that we would prefer that people come to us before they're come to landmarks before they're done, but the fact of the matter is that pretty much everything that happened in the 2019 to 2021 range was a total mess everywhere. And I know I tried to get a project approved in that period, and it is so I think that the result is fine, and I think that it should certainly be, I think it's okay for us to grant approval. Thank you. Or recommend approval.
I also think we should approve it. I don't disagree about the principle, but there are always exceptions to principles or rules. And I think that this is one. I think that the architect has operated in good faith. I have to believe that the owners operated in good faith. And the reality is that we're talking about 5 feet that preferably would be planted. But I'm looking at either side, and you know, certainly to the left, a couple of planters and a couple of trees in boxes is not the same as 5 feet of earth and planting. So I think there aren't, I don't think we have real precedents that show that the 5 foot requirement is met, even if in fact they don't have an excavation under either of the adjoining buildings. And I think when you look at it, it's fine. I also think that to some extent you could say that some accommodation has been made in the planting on the sides, and I think it's fine as is. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. I think it's perfectly fine, and I think we have to accept the fact that the exigencies of what happened with COVID got in the way, and that it probably would have been approved at that time. Just my own opinion. In any event, I think it should be approved today. So, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to call the roll.
Well, I have to make a motion first. So the motion is to
we need a
approve.
motion.
The
Okay.
motion is to approve.
Thank you.
Okay, let me,
Seconds,
Second. Do
Let
we
me-
have a second? Marco, I think I saw you with a second.
Oh, or Gail.
And Gail has a second, okay.
let me unmute everyone.
So, call the roll. This is a motion to approve.
Elizabeth, Elizabeth Ashby,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Michelle,
yes.
Alita,
No.
Sarah,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jane,
No.
Marco,
Yes.
Kimberly,
No.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have 980 Park Avenue, which is the St. Ignatius Loyola Church. It is in the Park Avenue Historic District, a Renaissance revival building designed by William Schickel and Company and constructed between 1885 and 1900. And the application is for new brass doors and to construct a new trash platform. So, Atchison Doyle, and are they here?
Are we unmuted?
You are now unmuted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Community Board 8. Thank you for having us come. I think it looks like a daunting package, and my name is Michael Doyle. This is Piers Ellis, who's my associate who's worked with me on this. We've been before you with St. Ignatius Loyola, so I won't be intentionally short, but I'll try to go through it. And I just wanted to point out one thing about the package, Kevin, was that we included something which was really for staff level and was approved, which is the repair of the door. So I don't have to burden you with a lot of the details of how to get in on that. So why don't we proceed? We've been in front of you for the handicapped access on the, if you can move pretty quickly with me. This is the most well-known view of the church. We're talking about the center doors, which have been, what started the whole door project was the inoperability of them. And certainly not to make a joke about it, but it was, they wouldn't open cleanly for a couple of funerals, including Donald Trump's sister, and they had to move coffins in sideways, and this has become an issue. So that started an examination of the doors. Those are two big sliding bronze doors. So those are going to be repaired and with no visible effect or changes, but we're changing the gears inside. The two side doors, which match the main doors, are not sliding, and those are going to be just refurbished in place. Next. As you know, it's an individual landmark, and it's also in your district, in the Upper East Side Historic District. Next. Designation photo. Pretty clear. Next. This is a photo. It's a little. It's not a little. It's very good because it shows the expanse of the front of the church and rectory and one of the schools, and the rose-colored areas. We were just showing the actual area of the work. Next. 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 Okay, this is the central doors that we were talking about. After you move the sliding doors into the side, these are the existing doors, which also cannot, these are also broken. The bronze has cracked, and they were designed, you can see the multiple hinges, to totally open for funerals and for weddings and for basically on a good day to be totally open for the congregation to move in and out. And the side doors, similar, but weren't meant to be as ceremonial. That's the left and the right. Next. So this shows the existing plans, how they work, the central sliding doors. And then what I was saying about the doors, how they fold and open so that there's access for more people, and again, weddings and coffins and the large congregation on a major holy day. Next. Again, this is the work that's being done that's approved by the staff. I won't keep you. The brackets we uncovered, and we're going to do all the brackets. Only one is broken totally, but the church is going to fix them all while we have the doors being worked on. Next. Now this is getting to the meat of the proposal. This is an interior photograph on the left with the sliding doors on the outside are closed in this photograph. And those are the doors that are supposed to open, but the hinges are snapped and can only partially open. You can almost see it, how it's sagging those sight lines of the, can you run on the top?
that area, that's sort of sunk in a little bit. Now that is the inside of the door. The exterior of those same doors on the right, without the sliding doors, are now open. And what we're proposing, this was an opportunity to come up with a more lighter door, similar to what was done at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was approved by Landmarks, but also to get more view into the church when those sliding doors are open, which would be left open a lot more often if we do get this approved at the commission. Now, if you notice, the existing doors have a fairly heavy frame. The right side on the proposed doors, structurally, we can get to a much smaller profile and a larger glazed opening. Next. On the existing doors, that's the photograph on the left, obviously. And then on the right is a rendering that we feel is pretty accurate to show what we would propose. This is, we're going to talk about the glazing in a moment, there is a concern for putting ballistic glass. It's a rough topic to be talking about, but in this day and age, the church, for a lot of reasons, wants to put bulletproof ballistic glass in it. Not that it's going to stop a bomb or whatever, but it's a concern. We've done this on a number of churches and synagogues in the city. The motif, which we'll enlarge in a moment, is picking up on the cross section from up above and putting it into a
ceramic fritted glass, which will be a part of the glass and heat treated. So it will be completely part of the glazing at the door and won't wear out.
Good. And this shows from the inside. And again, we tried to be fairly accurate. We took the photographs with as much opening as we could, and then put the new proposed in. Next. Did you go backwards?
What we're looking at here is the design, a similar condition.
Oh, for the side doors, I'm sorry. So these are the side doors, and again, the same principle would be done. And that's the rendering. And these, again, have a very deep recess. It's close to 3 feet. Next. Now, this is what's mentioned in the material we sent to Kevin for your distribution to your board was the at the top step. It's the classic New York kind of thing where in an older building where when you open those interior doors, you basically have to step back and go down a step to get in. And what we were looking for with the doors was to extend that top step so that you wouldn't have to do that. And we've been working very closely on another building at 1185 Park Avenue, where on the interior court, where we've had to match a lot of granite. And we think we have a fairly good match. But the idea would be to extend that 8 inches so you literally would have enough room to stand on that top stair and cut back the railing just enough to manage that, but also to swing the aforementioned casket through the door. Next. And that rose-colored area would be the new piece of stone, but all the steps would be the same size and the same riser. And as an aside, if you go back to one of the photographs of the front, currently on our boards is the proposal to Landmarks, which will hopefully be at the staff level. We're cleaning and repointing all the facades and the steps as well. It's this building is actually on a bright day, but it's a very it was cleaned the last time I was involved in it was close to 28 years ago. And it's, as a lot of you know, limestone takes a beating in the city. Next. So that's the stone. That's a close-up of the samples we had to bring to landmarks of the stone and the glazing. The glazing is misleading, but it's a fritted 75% opacity. That's not the right opacity. That's a solid, but it would be very light, and light would go both directions, from the outside and from the inside out. And that's now, Mr. Chairman, can I ask you, we have the second part, which is the rubbish platform. Should we just move into that and leave you with the
Yes.
two items? Yes, thank you. Okay. Now we go from the glorious to this to the ridiculous, or as we all know, the sanitation department has come up with the enclosed garbage, which I'm totally behind, living in Tribeca, for trying to deal with rats and just cleaning up the refuse. We generate a lot because of especially since, well, you guys saw the handicapped access elevator that was put in. It's been very workable. It's shared with the neighboring synagogue, by the way, for the high holidays. It's big because it is so accessible now that it's a major event space. But we generate a lot of rubbish. And to go to the area that there it is. This is on 84th Street. It's that area right to the right of the of that area. Just to point out what had been approved a couple of years ago, just before COVID, and we lived through the COVID experience, was that not ramping, but the elevator that's concealed in that piece. So now to the rubbish platform. That's the current state of it, and we're not happy showing these slides, but that is, only put out on garbage day. But point was to get these covered units up onto the platform so that they can roll out. We're having a lot of trouble with the landmarks. I say we because I'm involved with the parish council here, and with the sanitation department and with staff. You have to be super coordinated to get everything up and out there, as opposed to doing it off hours. Next. So what we're talking about is keeping all the fencing. We're not getting rid of any of the material, but we're trying to elevate a platform where, for instance, we could keep the loose bags on the bottom, but move the covered units to the upper, to the raised platform, which is the red area. I hope this is clear. Next, that again, that's the area. We're showing the again, just did full open kimono to show you this is the worst kind of day when there's been an event and we have to move a lot of material out. Next. So that's been looked at carefully by the metal workers, and it would all be that the fencing we've already had experience with moving the fencing around. It would be the same contractor who did an acceptable job to LPC. Next. And you can see, so the gate would be there. And we did this on the front of the school with matching gates, and which is to the right. We don't need to show that, but it's all been carefully maintained. Next. And the grading would be a pass-through. There'd be no snow gain or anything. It would be a rectangular, like a subway grading. With minimal disruption in terms of the existing stone fabric. That was a lot of concern of LPC and the staff. And so we're pretty in good position about that. Next. And then, what did we have in the appendix?
We've addressed some of LPC's material checklist concerns, and they've asked us to get into the details of this light fixture that we're covering up. The light exists there, but we're just proposing a minimally invasive casing fixture in gray to match the stone, just to tidy up and tie up all those knots.
And that stone infill goes back before the 69 designation, by the way. I always wondered where that came from. Next. Okay, this is, I don't think we need to. No, go on. Okay. And that's really our presentation. I'm ready to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I think first we'll go, if there are any members of the public who wish to speak. I don't see anybody with a raised hand. And so we will go to the committee.
Search.
And I guess in reverse order.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. Well, I think it's a very sensitive application. I think they cover very well. They try to repair the enlargement of the landing. I think it's a very smart decision, especially for the activities that the church has. Pretty much, I think, extremely sensitive, the first part. The second part, probably a little bit tricky, but since you need that area for the garbage, there is not an objection for that. So I will support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Jane?
Thank you. It's such a beautiful, austere building. I happen to be a parishioner there. In any case, not because of that, but I will totally approve the application, both parts. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
I would approve it also.
Sarah?
Thank you for this sensitive application. As my colleague mentioned, I support this application.
Alita?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I walk by the building a lot and enjoy it. Maybe not so much the toilets outside on the south side, but that's a whole temporary issue. With respect to the garbage, are cans going to be sitting out there all the time?
No, just minimally. Again, that was the worst case. They would move them for the pickup, but they would have the option of getting them out like the day before. So it wouldn't be a week of. I don't have the exact schedule on that street, but it's. I'm going through this in Tribeca in my own building. We're trying to get that organized.
No, I understand that, and I've been following the trash bins a bit, but I don't understand, and I'm sorry to take up the time, how you get the empty trash bins or the full trash bins up there. But as long as they're not sitting there for I don't know, they aesthetically, they just so interfere with that beautiful building.
I couldn't agree more, but it's really dealing with making sure that we can get them up on the right hours to meet the sanitation department.
Okay, well, I'm just undecided about the trash, but I'm okay with the doors. Thank you.
Understood.
Michelle?
Yeah. I feel a little differently than my colleagues. Thanks for the presentation. I'm not happy with the change of the doors on the Park Avenue facade, the side doors, enlarging the glazing. I'm all for you repairing hinges and whatever you need to do to get the swing for it to come back to the correct number of degrees for opening and all that. But I'm not in favor of you enlarging the individual glass panels. I like the thicker looking bronze. To me, that's more in keeping with everything that surrounds it. If you're using bulletproof glass or any heavier component than existing glass. Not for me to really decide, it's for your engineers, but it seems to me that the thicker frame would accomplish that in a better way. But aesthetically, I think I don't like the proposed doors, and I would disapprove that. Although, as I say, I'm perfectly in favor for you repairing hinging and making them as operable as you need to be, but I'm not in favor of you changing the design. As for the garbage, I want to zero into how you get those cans up there. So you're having like a subway grading on street level so that these can be pushed out to the street without lifting them. But at some point, you don't have an actual lift, so you do have to lift them to put them onto that new platform, and then you push them out. Now, these new proposed rubber cans have wheels on the bottom, so I don't know how you're doing that with a subway grading kind of floor facade. And it seems to me that maybe this could be accomplished more easily if you just turn those steps into a ramp. Now, I haven't examined the number of degrees that you have or anything like that, but have you examined a ramp versus this
Yes, we
complicated?
have. We have. That was definitely a concern. That I couldn't agree more with you. But you can roll them on this grading. But my push was like, since the amount of garbage or rubbish that's generated is erratic, it's not the same every day. Hopefully, you'd only be moving up a couple of these empty ones to start taking the plastic bags from the collection down below. There's nothing really generated in the church itself. It's all from the lower undercroft.
Oh, because that's where your catering facility is, or your public
Well,
space?
yeah, it's a catering. It's usually like a reception or party, and
Okay,
yeah.
so you're planning to put the cans up there empty and then hand load the garbage bags
Well,
into them because they'd be too heavy otherwise.
Again, what I discussed with the church was they wouldn't put all the cans up there. They just sort of anticipating like, oh, we only have nothing happened the last couple of days, so you wouldn't be sitting all the cans up there. I mean, that would look bizarre to me.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do. I'm not quite sure of the need. So for me, especially since you say that the need changes daily, for me, I think what you're mainly addressing is that you may not have staff available at the time when the city suggests that you put the garbage out. They have a very definite set of rules. They don't want it out more than a couple of hours before pickup, whatever the story is. So it seems to me that you're addressing that more than the actual convenience of rolling it directly out to the sidewalk. And it just seems, I think I would disapprove this too. I think that your staff, whoever is in charge of this, needs to be available each day at an appropriate time prior to garbage pickup. So in general, I'm not happy with these proposals, and I don't think I can support them. Sorry. Thank you.
Gail?
Thank you for the presentation. I certainly support the first part of the application. I do have some similar concerns to my colleagues regarding the platform for the garbage receptacles. Thank you.
And
Elizabeth?
I too have a big problem with the doors. I think they lose texture and character compared to the original. And I don't know how to solve your gun-proof, bulletproof glass problem, but if that is necessary, perhaps it could be affixed to the interior side of the door to provide that protection, but not disrupt the appearance from the outside. So I think on the garbage, I don't know whether that's the best solution to something you're required to do. So I retain an open mind about that one. But I really can't say that I honestly believe that the door change is appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add one thing? I just got a message, a text from the building super who
Sure,
handles
Mike,
all
go
this.
ahead.
And he said that the recyclables would stay down below the all the time, and but that the minimum amount of covered cans would be sitting on the top, but there'd be no loose garbage sitting there under normal. So I don't want to misspeak.
Thank you. I think that was Elizabeth. Kimberly, did Kimberly comment?
I didn't, but I can support both parts of the application, Anthony. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Kimberly. So I guess we go to David.
Well, starting with the garbage, as long as it's well managed, it seems to me whether it's recyclable or not, it's just a question of when you put the containers on street level. And I think it's really just a management issue, but I think that this makes the management issue a lot easier. So I certainly will support that. When it comes to the doors, I really have mixed feelings about it. Somehow, I like the proportions of the old doors better. I understand what you're trying to do with the new doors. I really wonder, just having more glass, whether when you're down on street level and you look up, whether you're really going to see that much more of the inside of the church. It's a nice idea, but I'm not sure can I pass that church enough. That really is a major issue. I think it really comes down to what's appropriate in terms of the age of the building and the proportions of the frames for the glass. And the truth be known, I would rather have the old proportions. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, David. I think the garbage thing is fine. We spend as citizens too much time worrying about the garbage on the sidewalk, as is, and I think that this was I think that this is an adequate solution to a problem. I'm of two minds on the doors. I think the big sliding doors are sort of the when you have the big sliding doors, in fact, the inner glazed doors really serve a function of almost as if they're not really doors. They are in fact more like windows, or if they're pulled apart, if they're opened completely, they are in fact not there, or at least functionally not there. And so in a way, I understand the argument for trying to make the church church interior more visible to passersby. But then I sort of then wonder why you're doing it on the sides, the north and south doors rather than the center door, which in fact have no ceremonial closure. So what you see is what you get all the time. So it's a little bit confusing to me. And then looking at the plan, I confess I haven't been in the church in a long time. You've got more doors on the other side of the narthex. It's a kind of dory solution. But anyway, I think I can probably vote to approve this. Yeah. And I think we've come to the end of it, and now we get to vote.
Do the co-chairs want to recognize Alita? She's had her hand up for
Oh,
questions.
okay. Go ahead, Alita.
Thank you. I just want to make a point about, I'm changing my opinion on the doors based on what David has said, and I think Michelle. But for the trash, there's no obligation that they have a minimum amount of trash bins up there, which are aesthetically unappealing regardless of the amount of time. And much like the scaffolding that litters all of the streets, they may not want to bring them in and out and may find it much easier to leave them up there. So that's my big concern about that. And I had a question, but I've since forgotten. And I guess I can't make a resolution, so I won't.
Okay. Would someone like to form a resolution? We seem
Can I make
divided.
one more comment before you call for a resolution?
Okay, Marco.
Okay, and to the applicant, I would like to have the same picture but on inside. Yes, thank you. I think that made me believe that the designer is more within the context of the whole design. I don't think that's these solid and bulky frames was part of the composition. It looks like more closely to this composition, and that is why the reasons I support that application. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. I would much prefer that this be a single resolution. Michelle.
I was going to make a resolution to disapprove. I think we have some split opinion. I don't know whether or not how you feel about that. If
Does
there are
someone
any
second?
seconds,
I agree.
I'll
Elizabeth
leave a
has
second.
I agree with Anthony that it should be one if we can do it.
Yeah. Okay. So we now have a motion made and seconded to disapprove. So yes is no.
Call the question.
Okay, let me unmute everyone.
That was a nice touch with your thumbs up, Elizabeth.
Marco?
Yes.
No, that's to disapprove.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confused. No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
Jane?
No.
John?
No.
David?
No.
Anthony?
No.
Sarah?
No.
Alita?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to change. Oh, I'm so confused.
This is a disapproval.
But I'm voting no because I'm opposed to the disapproval.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle?
Yes,
Gail?
No.
Elizabeth?
Yes,
Kimberly?
No.
Okay. So the motion failed. So would someone like to introduce a motion to approve? I see Marco nodding and Jane nodding, or Jane actually raised her physical hand.
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Marco.
Is
Second?
anybody can second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jane second. So let's call the roll again.
Elizabeth,
No,
Gail,
Yes.
Michelle,
No,
Alita,
No.
Sarah,
Thank you. Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Marco,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
So I believe the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you to the applicants, and I guess
Very
now we
much.
move.
We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. We move to item 3.
Okay, item 3, 12E69th Street, Upper East Side Historic District. Ferguson, HMO, neoclassical building designed by William Schickel and constructed in 1883 with a complete facade replacement by Engwells Osworth in 1913. Application is for restorative work at the primary facade and alterations within the sunken areaway, alterations to the rear facade fenestration, and changes within the rear yard, alterations to the rooftop bulkhead, and construction of 2 new shade structures at the roof. Is the applicant here?
Yes. Hi, David. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Ripple from Higgins Quays Barth and Partners, the preservation consultants for this project. I'm joined by the design team from Ferguson and Shamamian, Damian Zamora, Molly Visk, and Patrick Suarez. Before we jump in, I just wanted to note for you all that there were some minor updates that we made to the presentation today based on Landmark's feedback we just received. The scope has not changed, just additional clarifications or graphic improvements. So if there's some small things that look different, it's because the team has been working very hard to respond quickly to their feedback so that you're seeing the same thing. So this is 12 East 69th Street. It's on the south side of the street between Madison and Fifth Avenue. As mentioned, the proposal for review today includes alterations to the entry door, changes at the rear facade and within the rear yard, and changes at the roof, including altering the stair bulkhead, mechanical, and new shade structures. It was constructed in 1883 and designed by William Schickel. However, as was very common for this district, and actually especially for this block, in 1913, the facade was completely rebuilt, designed by William Wells Bosworth in a neoclassical style, an incredibly reserved design with limestone facing, a Greek revival style entrance, and balconies and ironwork with very simple, slender picket railings. In 1944, it was divided at the interior for apartments. So the 1945 photo shows the only visible exterior change that took place at the entry, where glass and metal doors and the transom replaced that solid paneled door and fluted columns that was original in 1915. The changes since 1945 have been fairly subtle, comprising a red granite veneer at the steps, changes at the limestone door surround, and replacement of the ironwork at the areaway and balconies. The slight shifting of the door surround elements resulted in a slightly taller entablature. The proposal includes restoration actually of all of these elements, along with new windows at all the floors to match the historic, and some new planter boxes at the first floor, all of which Landmarks confirmed they'll review at staff level, but I'm noting here for your understanding of the full scope. The public hearing scope that we'll review at the primary facade includes the replacement of the existing door and alterations within this sunken areaway. So behind those sidewalk level railings, the sunken areaway is accessed by a simple set of diamond plate steps with a basement entry door, an understoop gate, The scope here includes lowering the level of the grate and the basement door sill. The restoration work and proposed changes will do much to return the building to its historic 1915 appearance when this facade was remade. We see here in proposed elevation on the right, the proposed work for review, including the new door and transom, and below the lowered basement entry and a hint at some of the changes at the roof. When the facade was completely reworked in yes.
Clear on what's going to be approved at staff level and what we have to approve or
Yes.
disapprove?
Sure. So the restoration work that I noted, the kind of restoration of the limestone surrounding the door, there's work at the stoop that they're doing. They're replacing the metal ironwork. They're replacing all the windows. All of that can be done at staff level. So to look at this a little bit more closely, to your point, David, at the commission level, what we're reviewing is the installation of the new door infill, specifically the plane that it sits at and retention of this extra step. So looking at these three doors, the original 1915 door, of course, was lost in the 1940s. And stylistically, this entry has since been a bit disassociated from the rest of the facade. So the public hearing proposal involves replacing that 1940s glass and metal infill with a new solid paneled door flanked by the fluted columns and topped by the new transom to match the 1915 documentation. However, the proposal also includes setting the door slightly inward to provide a more comfortable entry point. You'll also notice that in addition to the stone veneer that we saw in the photographs on the stoop, another step was added here between these pilasters to lift the level of the entry. So given the level of the interior floor slab at the parlor and the head height at the basement, we're proposing to retain this extra step and have it reclad in limestone to match the historic stoop finish. So it's that setback of the door and retaining this extra step that really the commissioners will need to comment on. At the sunken areaway, lowering the level of the grate means that the diamond plate steps will be extended. It gets a little longer. The door and the security gate will be replaced, and a new metal gate will also be installed at the understoop opening. So when the stoop was clad with the existing granite veneer, and that extra step that I described was added, the overall height of each of the steps increased as well because of the veneer. So in restoring the stoop to limestone, the proposal also restores the height of the steps and lowers the whole composition, as you can see there, by dropping the entry from 4'7" to 3'9 1/4". Restoring the steps and bringing that entry level closer to the historic impacts the overall head height at the basement, which is why the proposal includes dropping that areaway, the sunken areaway grate level, and the basement entry sill in order to maintain a comfortable head height to get through that door. And the shift in the plane of the door is also more clear here at the parlor level. The existing is set back 1 foot from the facade, and the proposed will be set back 2 feet to provide a more comfortable landing and entry. So the proposal overall has a significant impact from the restorative work, returning the primary facade of the building closer to its historic condition, and the proposed changes, including the plane of the door within the opening and the drop at the sunken areaway, are discrete alterations that will not detract from the cohesion of the restored neoclassical facade. The entry will largely be restored to the original proportions and detailing and will more cleanly relate to the facade. And this setback of the door is in keeping with other neoclassical entries and doors found within the district, also with the subtle panel detailing at the return, a typical treatment for that landing. The property has a small rear yard, which is accessed from the basement level. So we'll move back to that area. The rear facade is characterized by punched windows with irregular spacing at the 1st through 4th floors. You'll notice that this far right line of windows has a wider brick pier separating it from the others. And then at the yard level, the basement entry to the yard requires descending a small flight of steps to the lower grade. The yard is contained currently, you can see in the 2 left photos, by simple masonry walls on 3 sides. There is a very narrow window of visibility through to a portion of the rear facade from East 68th Street between the larger apartment buildings that back up to the house. So at the rear, a new raised deck will be constructed to elevate the floor of the yard by about 4 feet in order to provide flush accessible access from the basement level. And given the way that the rear of the house is boxed in by larger buildings to the south, the windows at the basement and the 1st floor are proposed to be modified to provide larger openings and daylighting to the family rooms at the rear of the house. And at the upper floors, the easternmost column of windows will be shifted to create a slightly more even spacing with the other window bays. At the roof, we see 2 shade structures that are proposed for the back of the roof, along with a hint again of some of the alterations to the bulkhead and the mechanicals, as I alluded to earlier. This is in section looking west through the rear yard, existing on the left and proposed on the right. This raised deck is a bit clearer here. The existing garden walls will remain, and a planter and a new screen trailage or lattice will be installed at the inside of the walls. Moving to the roof, given the slope of the roof, the existing has this terraced wood paving. You see the metal fence at the back, and the mechanicals occupy the east side of the roof. And then a few more views showing more of the terracing. This is looking towards the north. And then the existing bulkhead and those mechanicals, and also in the bottom right, more of the mechanicals, and then the stepped parapet wall along the west side of the building. The proposal at the roof will reconfigure the massing of the bulkhead, which you see here in the existing, this little box. And so in the proposed, it elongates, it's slightly to the north. The mechanical will be relocated from that corner and be consolidated around the massing of the bulkhead in order to reduce the footprint and also avoid visibility. There is 1 mechanical unit and mechanical screen at the roof level on the north side of the bulkhead. And then at the back, those 2 new shade structures, as well as a skylight on the west side, which is below the height of the parapet. The proposal also includes lattice work panels to be installed at the inside of the east and west parapet walls. So in section, we see those changes at the roof, as well as the interior alterations, including a mechanical attic, which involves a minimal setback soffit behind the 4th floor windows will be barely perceptible. Detail section through the roof looking east, you're seeing that mechanical screen and the bottom in the proposed. At the north edge, that reconfigured bulkhead and the mechanical units behind it, and one of the shade structures along with that lattice work panel beyond. So in Axon, we can see that whole overall composition kind of come together. The bulkhead will have a light beige stucco finish and a zinc metal cladding at the elevator overrun. And the lattice panels and metal shade structures will have a painted French blue finish. And the proposal from the rear, also seeing the changes at the rear facade to the windows and within the rear yard. So we did construct a mock-up and assess the visibility in the following pages. Nothing at the roof is visible over the primary facade in front of the building. So as we move towards the park, a piece of that lattice work and the parapet is minimally visible behind and lower than the chimney. This is the real view on the far left, and then we have zoomed views for clarity on the right. This is a similar view showing only those lattice work panels. It'll be seen again within the context of the side elevation and the chimney. And then from the park, the bulkhead will be partially visible, but clad in zinc to blend into the sky. It'll also be seen within the context of these larger chimneys and from a distance. And then much further into the park, the bulkhead is kind of barely perceptible through the trees at this distance. From the east, that mechanical screen towards the front of the roof will be curved so as not to be visible. And from across Madison, only a slight change to the chimney will be visible, but the materials and details will match the existing, so you will not actually perceive any change. And then from the rear on 68th Street, the shade structures will be seen through that narrow street wall gap within the context of the secondary elevations, the mechanical and support infrastructure, along with that altered parlor floor window and the lattice screen at the yard. And from one single spot on the sidewalk, the changes to that eastern line of windows is just barely visible. But with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have and look forward to discussion.
Thank you. And we see if there are any comments from the public. Okay, no comments from the public, so we'll go to the committee and we'll start alphabetically at the beginning.
Elizabeth?
I appreciate your presentation. I think it was very inclusive. I think this is an excellent, really, restoration, and I will support it.
Gail?
I certainly commend you for going back to the historic drawings and doing your best to replicate. I have a question regarding the bulkhead. What is the height of the existing bulkhead? And as you've reconfigured it, what will the height be? And also the height of the shade structures?
Yes, of course. So I'm going back to the section to take a look at that. So the overall height of the bulkhead will actually remain the same. The height of the parapet at the existing is 85.5 feet, and the parapet at the new bulkhead is 85.5 as well. Because of that kind of reconfiguration, it stretches slightly more towards the north, but the height will remain the same. And the shade structures, let's see if we perhaps, here we go. So the top of the shade structure is 83 and 1 inch. From the kind of paving, let's say, to the peak, it's 15 feet tall, and the inside clearance is 9 foot.
I have another question, and it's more for education. You said that with the zinc cladding, that in essence, the structure will basically kind of blend into the sky. Wouldn't the metal end up being more reflective of sun rays and all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so zinc works very well for cladding rooftop elements like this, and it's usually the preferred material from landmarks as well, because the finish of it's actually quite matte and kind of mottled. It's not highly reflective like an aluminum or a steel, or anything like that. It's more matte, so it doesn't end up being highly reflective and doesn't typically call your attention to it. It does kind of fade into, let's say, a standard kind of gray sky day.
Thank you.
Of course.
No other questions.
Michelle?
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Great clarity. Question about well, first the windows, you're moving the windows. Now, I assume that the original windows were wood. What are all the new windows going to be?
The new windows will all be wood as well, which is one of the reasons why, and they're matching the historic configuration. So that piece of work was considered restorative by Landmark staff, and they would be able to approve that as well.
Oh, okay, that's great. Now, the shade structures, you have it illustrated on the slide that's in front of us. It almost looks like the shape of a circus tent, but you have it in another image where the top is flat. So what is the actual shape of the shade structures?
Was it one of these axons, or I'm trying to think, to answer your question directly, it is this pitched profile. It's this profile as it's shown.
This is the profile.
Yes, it's not flat.
So the frame is metal. And what is this made out of?
That's also metal. Damien, I believe if you're on, if you want to clarify any of the materiality.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you for having us. The intention is that it does take on a tent-like shape, but that it's actually made out of metal. And the intention is that it complements the lattice work, so it'd be painted metal, leaning more towards that French blue that we were just seeing on the other slides, but it might actually even be zinc. Yeah, it's the French blue, I think, is where we're heading right now. So painted metal.
So that whole top piece, that on the right, as we look at it, is solid. It's solid.
It's solid, yes.
It's a shade structure. It's painted blue metal.
Correct. It's the vertical walls, or the portions of the walls, or the supports are lattice, if that's helpful to imagine. But the actual roof is actually going to be portions of it, if not all of it, solid.
And it's like 4 posters, and those will be lattice.
Yes.
Metal lattice.
Metal lattice, yes.
And these structures are not visible from the street, or are slightly visible?
They're not visible from 69th Street. I'll go back to the visibility at the rear. It is visible from 68th Street. There's that very narrow gap between the larger apartment buildings on the south side of this one, where you're going to see it from underneath through this gap, amidst all of the other things.
Oh, I see. Yes, from there.
Right.
Well, I have to say I'm concerned about that visibility. I mean, a blue, I'll call it the shape of a tent, even though it's not fabric or canvas, but a blue tent, and it's coming up about 15 feet from the rooftop. Am I correct? And peeking beyond the parapet wall. I think that's significant visibility.
The peak of the tent, you're right, is 15 feet, and then this edge is 9 feet over. It is a very limited kind of span of visibility through this street wall gap. It's kind of just a glimpse into the middle of the block. You're not seeing it in conjunction with the primary facade and seeing it along with kind of all of the other mechanical units and, kind of alleyway accoutrement back there. But
nothing else is that color. And your aim for the zinc was almost because it's non-reflective, but that color is a very strong color and not in keeping with anything that's around it. I'm very pleased with the front restoration and the wood windows and even the realignment. I have no problem with any of it, but I find this troublesome. So anyway, those are my comments. I don't know what the co-chairs will do about breaking this up or not, but anyway, those are my comments. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Alita?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I'm always happy to see a restoration to the historic look of a building. I am, as Michelle has said, troubled by what's going on the roof. It looks way too visible, and to have a blue, for want of a better term, circus tent seems as though the owner is striving for visibility and, if you will, whimsy. I like whimsy, but I'm not sure that this is appropriate. My thinking is, if it were a flat roof on that shade structure, it wouldn't be visible. And that's what I think should happen, rather than have this blue pitch tent, which again seems designed for visibility. I'm a little confused though. I thought you said that there were two, and also my experience is whenever I walk by buildings with mock-ups, has always been more visible than has been pitched during these presentations. And so I'm greatly concerned about this. And even if you can't see it from across the street, seeing it through a gap, seeing it from the park, is too visible for me. But if you don't mind, what am I missing about? Is there a second shade structure?
There's a second shade structure when you're looking at this screen on the left side, but it's hidden behind the buildings. It really is quite a narrow gap, and the stretch along the sidewalk from which you see this is, maybe 20 or 30 feet long. It's not like you're seeing it up and down the block. It's just kind of this window into the middle of the block. And you really only catch that shade structure that's at the east side of the back of the roof.
Well, is that shade structure the same? And what happens when you get to the park or from another angle, either east or west?
We walked up and down East 69th Street across Madison Avenue. Let me kind of go back this way. So this was from the back. This is from across Madison Avenue. It's hidden behind the other buildings that are alongside it. And then moving closer, it's at the far back end of the roof. So you're not seeing it over the front. From the park, you're catching a glimpse of the bulkhead that's more towards the north side. So you're kind of catching that angle in here. And again, this is from quite a distance in the park, from the sidewalk at Fifth Avenue. The shade structures are all the way back at the back of the building. What you're seeing here is that bulkhead clad in zinc.
And I see you got your photos on a cloudy day, so the zinc would blend in, but hopefully we continue to have some blue sky. And so the zinc won't blend in quite as much. So I'm having just a lot of conceptual trouble with this, with everything that's up on the roof, but thank you. I'm done.
Sarah?
Hi, thank you for this application and the presentation. Gail asked most of my questions, and for me, what I'm thinking about right now is if the way the metal shade structures are designed, if it may be less visible than if it were like a building structure instead. And so in looking at the renderings, I'm still not quite sure. I don't think that it is as visible as I thought it was going to be. And I think I'm comfortable with it, but I would like to hear more from my colleagues, but I thought that it was a very creative design, and I really appreciate what you did, especially with the door on the front facade.
John?
I don't have anything to add.
Jane?
I love that, John. I don't have anything to add. I do have something to add. I love the whimsy of the pavilions. I love lattice work. I love the French blue. And even if it is visible through that narrow little gap, remember that these pavilions, or they remind me of garden follies in an English garden, are, you can see through them. They're not solid structures. I think the French blue is charming, and I love the whimsy of the slope of those roofs. I just think it's charming. So I will support the application, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building, just utterly exquisitely beautiful. Thank you.
Marco?
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what Jane said. I agree with her. The only concern what I have is the color blue on the frame of the roof of that structure. And that made me concerned, even though that is minimal visible between two buildings. That will be the only impact, because blue, it will have a big contrast in that part. An application that become almost is extremely very sensitive and almost not visible because of the color, it becomes a little bit more aggressive. That's my comments. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Hi, thank you so much. This was a delightful presentation. I have no further questions, but I appreciate all of the restoration work and I will support it.
Anthony and David?
Okay, bravo, Jane. I think this is absolutely fine. I think we all too often make a fetish of very partial visibility between two buildings half a block away, or very partial visibility from Central Park. No one will walk by the back of this building and notice it at all. It's 100 feet away. Likewise, no one will see this from the park. It's ridiculous. It's a lovely design in every way, and we should just say yes. Thank you for doing such a civic benefit with the restoration of this building.
Well, I think Jane and Anthony have both said it very well. The restoration is excellent, and when you happen to see the what I'll call the follies on the roof, it's a serendipity. To me, it would be sort of a wonderful discovery as I'm walking along and looking through that slot of space. I think it's extremely well done, and I think that the additions of the two tent-like structures on the roof, the shade structures as you call them, just add to the interest of the building and in no way detract from it. If anything, they add to the building in a nicely thoughtful way. So I guess we need a resolution. Jane?
Move to approve as presented.
We'll have a second from Gail. Please call the roll, Kevin.
Let me unmute everyone. Marco?
Let me think. I'm gonna pass it this time.
Normally we would go alphabetically from the beginning if we're gonna alternate. So start with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Michelle?
Abstain.
Alita?
No.
Sarah?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Well, thank you for a great presentation, and Anthony, chair is yours.
Thank you very much for your
David.
time.
Thanks so much,
And
everyone.
thanks. That was a wonderful presentation, guys. 726 Madison Avenue, which is in the Upper East Side Historic District. The architects are Nelson. This is a neo-Georgian building designed by Morrell Smith and constructed in 1932. The application is for facade restoration, alterations to entrances, window and shutter replacement, and rooftop installations. Is the applicant here?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Would you like
Great.
to share?
Yes, please. I was going to say, is it okay if I go ahead and share my
Please
screen?
do.
All right, wonderful. All right, can you all see that okay and hear me okay? All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and get started then. So thank you all for having us this evening. I'm Julie Rosen from Higgins, Quaisbarth and Partners. We are the preservation consultants on this project. And I'm joined this evening by my colleague Cass Stackelberg, as well as Tim Mirren from Nelson, the project architect. And we are presenting this project on behalf of JP Morgan Chase, who's the owner of the building. And JP Morgan Chase is proposing an adaptive reuse of 726 Madison Avenue. I'll be taking you through the proposed scope of work tonight, which includes a range of repair work and modifications at the facades and roof to support the new use. And then Cass and Tim will also be available at the end for any questions as well. The building is located on a corner lot at the southwest corner of Madison Avenue and East 64th Street in the southern portion of the Upper East Side Historic District, and that's shown on the maps on the right-hand side of the slide. As David introduced, the building was constructed in 1932 for the Bank of the Manhattan Company, which was actually a predecessor company to JP Morgan Chase. Morrell Smith was the architect, and he designed the three-story building in a neo-Georgian style. And here we have a photo on the left of the building at the time of its construction in 1932. And then on the right, a photo from the LPC Historic District designation in 1981. Looking at the existing conditions, on the left, we have an overall view of the building. As you can see, it actually has two primary facades, one facing onto Madison Avenue, and then the other facing onto East 64th Street. There's no rear facade of this building. Everything is street facing. I also want to point out here, while we're looking at this corner shot, that the side elevations of the two adjacent buildings do rise up behind 726 Madison, and they form this kind of tan-colored backdrop behind the building. And then on the right, just to point out a few details on each facade. Again, we have Madison facade on the top here, East 64th Street facade on the bottom. The main building entrance is located on Madison Avenue through this central entrance door here. Overall, the building features Flemish bond brickwork, marble lintels, and a band course throughout the first and second floors. There's a wood entrance surround at this main entrance on Madison Avenue, multi-light wood windows and wood shutters. The roof is slate, so all of the angled roofs are slate. And then at the very top of the building, you can see this best in this corner view, what the designation report calls a quote-unquote Chinese Chippendale roof railing. Looking more closely at some of the existing details of the building, here we have, again, a close-up view of the Madison Avenue entrance. The existing conditions here include a wood entrance surround and transom bar. The entrance surround is set on a marble base with a marble threshold. There is a historic fan light at the top of the opening as well. And I do want to point out that the door and the side lights and the single transom window are non-historic. They likely date to the late 1980s or early 1990s. On 64th Street here, the detail on the left, this is one of the ground floor windows, 3 bays in from Madison. This is the location where we are proposing to add an egress door for code compliance. And then we have some other details on the right here showing some of the window and roof details. And I have more details for you later. The building does retain its original double hung wood windows throughout, with shutters only at the second floor. As you can see, the windows are 12/12 with profiled casings. The windows themselves, the sash, the mutton profiles are actually quite simple. The glazing is also quite varied throughout the building. There is some colored and wavy glass lights throughout, and those are scattered amongst otherwise clear glazing. On 64th Street here, a couple detail photos of the balcony doors. The infill here is composed of 2 casement doors, side lights, and a transom as well. This is up at the second floor behind the Juliet balcony. Moving to the roof, the footprint is very small, and open space is extremely limited on the roof, particularly with that kind of angled roof setback off 64th Street. And just to point out some of the existing conditions here, I'll show you roof plans later in the presentation, but do want to point out that there is an existing stair and elevator bulkhead here at the southwest corner of the roof. There's also a large light well kind of at the middle western portion of the roof. So here's a detail here in the lower left, just to point out in the overalls, the light well is back in this portion of the building. And then there were previously a number of mechanical units set up on platforms, although the reason why you're seeing it in some photos and not others is that these units have actually already been removed in anticipation of the start of this project. I also mentioned that Chinese Chippendale roof railing, so that's what we see here. Because it's not code compliant, at some point there was a pipe railing installed, actually set inboard of the historic railing, which is also not code compliant. So we are proposing a way to bring this up to compliance while still retaining the historic railing in place. So moving into the proposed scope of work, we have the existing Madison Avenue elevation on the left, the proposed elevation on the right. There is a significant amount of facade and roof repair work that's proposed as part of this project. And that's going to include such things as cleaning, repairing, and repointing the brick facades, repairing all of the marble elements throughout, repainting the wood cornice, and the window surrounds, the dormers, and that historic roof railing, and also repairing the slate roof in kind. And then the other modifications that we're presenting to you tonight are proposed to upgrade the building for its adaptive reuse. We have a lot of details to show you, so just high level to let you know that the proposal includes replacement of the entrance door and surround on Madison, as well as replacement of the double hung windows and shutters, and then installation of mechanical units on the roof. And the project has been designed to bring the building up to current building and energy code, and LEED certifications also being sought for the project. And so all of these considerations have been particularly integral in developing the window replacement and the mechanical scopes of work. And here we have a colorized elevation of the proposed work on Madison Avenue with different callouts for the various materials that we're proposing. And I'll go into more specifics as we move through the presentation. Looking at the existing versus proposed 64th Street elevations, in particular, I want to point out that window bay on the ground floor of 64th Street. This is going to be converted to an egress door to comply with code and egress requirements. And then the balcony door infill here up at the second floor will also be replaced. Otherwise, the proposed work is largely the same as on Madison, with all of that other double hung window replacement and facade repair work as well. And then similarly, a colorized proposed elevation of 64th Street. So in thinking about the proposal for 726 Madison, we were looking at the larger context of other recent projects in the Upper East Side Historic District. We have 4 examples here where small-scale bank buildings were also converted to new uses. We've found this really helpful as we've moved through this project. And so the 4 buildings shown here, all located on Madison Avenue, were purpose-built bank buildings, just like 726 Madison, that are now utilized as retail spaces and art galleries. And LPC reviewed all of these projects and approved various exterior modifications, particularly at entrances and at the roofs, all in support of the new uses. So moving into some of the specific details for the proposed scope of work, we have the existing entrance door details here. So as I mentioned, when we were looking at the existing conditions photos, the existing condition is that we have a wood entrance surround set on a marble base with a marble threshold, a wood transom bar, a historic fan light, and then non-historic door and side light infill below. The proposed scope of work I'm going to kind of go through all the details here, but the proposed scope of work is really intended to retain the character of the entry, but again, upgrade it for the new use. So the existing wood surround will be removed and a new Vermont marble surround will be installed in its place, with all of the details and the dimensions matching the wood surround. Vermont marble will actually match the existing marble that's used for other elements on the building. As I mentioned, of the lintels and the band courses are all marble, so the Vermont marble will match that, and it will also tie in this main entrance surround to the rest of the building. I do want to note that the door threshold for the proposed condition will actually be lowered by 2 inches from the existing, and that's to create an at-grade accessible entrance for the building. The marble threshold will also be replaced in kind to match existing. Looking at the door itself, there will be a new panel door and side lights and transom bar installed. These will be painted black, and then the glazing itself will be frosted. The historic fan light will be salvaged and reinstalled in its existing location. And then as you can see in these 2 details here, a light box will be installed inside behind the fan light. There will be a very small strip light fixture installed as well. And then a frosted film will be installed on the back side of the glazing. And then in addition, there will be a small plaque and a small light fixture installed adjacent to the entrance. Historically, buildings of this age and type, so looking at bank buildings, smaller scale private club buildings, they often had stone entrance surrounds. We're showing just a selection of those here, but so we are looking at the proposal for 726 within this historic context, seeing that buildings really did quite often have stone details throughout and not necessarily a mixture of wood and stone. We also see paneled wood entrance doors as common features in this building, in these types of buildings. And then an existing versus proposed view, again, of the entrance surround on Madison Avenue. Again, this is the existing main entrance and will remain the main entrance to the building. So moving on to the details for the new egress door on 64th Street. So the scope of work here is that one existing wood window will be removed along with the plain brick below to enlarge the height of the masonry opening. As you can see in plan here, there will be a portion of the existing wrought iron railing and marble curb that will be removed in order to provide access to the store from the sidewalk. The railing will be removed, salvaged, and stored on site. And then the new door will be installed within the existing opening, so maintaining the existing width. The new door will be wood painted black. And then in order to accommodate, again, the access to this door from the sidewalk, new wrought iron railings and marble curbing matching the existing will be installed along with a new marble threshold stone. The egress door, the design, the location, the size is all meant to maintain the rhythm of the other door and window infill along the base of the building, and to really kind of blend into the overall architectural character and not detract from the historic elements of the building. We have seen LPC approve similar installations in the past. We have 2 examples here, just to give you a little bit of background about these. 909 Madison, again, a purpose-built bank building converted for art gallery use. LPC did approve, similar to what we're proposing for 726, the removal of an existing window and lowering the sill to accommodate a new egress entrance. Similarly, at 706 Madison Avenue, this is actually just 1 block south of our project. There was a door historically on the side facade on 63rd Street that over the years had been converted to a window, and LPC approved converting it back to a door to provide a secondary egress for the new retail use. Moving on to the window replacement. So the existing double hung wood windows are detailed here. They're single glazed and they're going to be replaced due to performance and energy efficiency reasons. I do want to point out that the decorative surrounds will be retained, and it's just the sash and the window frames that will be removed. The new windows will match the existing in material, configuration, profiles, dimensions, and finish. And the new windows will be double glazed with clear glass and then applied muntins with spacer bars. As I mentioned, the second floor has shutters. So the existing shutters will be removed and new slatted shutters painted black will be installed. We are also proposing new planter boxes only at the second floor, and those are actually being reviewed at staff level. At the balcony doors on 64th Street, again, these existing doors, side lights, and transom will be replaced. And then new wood infill matching the existing in configuration, profiles, details, dimensions, finish will be installed. And similar to the double hung windows, the new infill will be double glazed with clear glass and applied muntins with spacer bars. Transitioning to the rooftop scope, we have existing versus proposed axonometric view shown here. So you can see the roof in the context of the overall building and the adjacent neighboring buildings. Again, I do want to emphasize the small roof area and the extremely limited open space for equipment. So really what's shown in yellow is the available area to use. And in fact, because the roof area is so limited, that existing light wall that I pointed out earlier will actually be infilled to just add a little bit more space for the new equipment. The existing stair and elevator bulkhead in that southwest corner will be enlarged. As you can see here, it will continue to be a stair and elevator bulkhead with an elevator machine room within it. The existing mechanical equipment has been removed, and all of the new mechanical equipment has been sized and located to not only meet the needs of the building use, but also to comply with a variety of code requirements for access paths and offsets from adjacent buildings. And there's a whole host of things that have needed to be, followed. And Tim from Nelson can certainly provide more information if requested, but this will give you a good overview of what we're proposing. And then looking more closely at the specifics, we have existing roof plan on the left and the proposed roof plan on the right. I do want to note that the larger mechanical units that we have closer to 64th Street, as well as the larger unit in the middle of the roof, and the bulkhead will all be painted a custom tan color that is intended to blend in with the side walls of the two adjacent buildings, as well as other buildings in the backdrop. And you'll see this a bit more in our visibility studies. It's only the smallest units that will be white in color, and that's because of a manufacturer requirement. As I mentioned, the existing railings are not code compliant. And so in order to address this, we're going to keep the existing railing in its existing condition and location. And then just that non-historic guardrail that's inboard of it, that is going to be replaced with a code compliant glass guardrail. We do have 2 slides here of existing versus proposed building sections. I do want to get to the visibility studies and any questions you have, but as always, I'm happy to come back to these if you'd like to look more closely at anything. We also have existing and proposed railing details. So again, retaining the existing historic railing in place and just replacing that non-code compliant pipe guardrail with a new glazed guardrail that is 42 inches above the roof surface and will comply with code. So moving into our visibility studies, just to orient you to how our slides are laid out, we have the existing mock-up views always on the left, a proposed rendered view on the right, and then a zoom view of that proposed rendering as well to really just isolate the visibility and make sure that it's clear. The way we've organized this is we're starting from the south of the building and then moving north. So here we are at the southeast corner of 63rd and Madison. This is the first time from the south that you are able to see anything on the roof. And as you can see, it's a really minimal, a very limited view of one of the mechanical units and a little bit of glass railing. But very much part of the backdrop and the neighboring buildings across 64th Street. As we move up Madison Avenue, so here we're standing across the street. Again, mock-up view on the left, proposed rendered view on the right. We do see two of the mechanical units that are oriented closer to 64th Street. There's going to be very limited visibility of that glass railing as well. I think this is just a good place to point out that, the units, while certainly visible, they're simple in design and massing, and they're going to be finished that custom tan color so that they blend with the surrounding context. So what we're seeing is, they're going to be largely against the backdrop of existing buildings, side elevations, and taller buildings beyond. And moving up just to look at a different view, this is from just east of Madison on 64th Street. The intent of, again, the finish of these units is really to allow, again, for that blending in with the backdrop, but also to allow for contrast with the historic building so that its defining features are remaining legible and separate from everything that's happening on the roof. I do want to note the glass guardrail will again be minimally visible behind and above the historic railing, but it's really the historic railing that you will be seeing and will remain a prominent feature of the building. Moving west on 64th Street here, this is the only place where you're seeing those smaller condensing units. Otherwise, we're seeing just one of the units at the 64th, excuse me, at the Madison side of the roof. Moving up Madison, this is a view between 64th and 65th Street on the east side of the roof. I'm sorry, you can actually see one of those condensing units from here as well, but everything being seen against everything being seen against the adjacent building side elevations with that tan color blending into everything that is behind, allowing the historic building to still remain completely legible. And then finally, this is our northernmost view. So this is up at the corner of 65th and Madison. This is the last time that you see the building and anything on the roof before it's completely out of sight. And again, it's just a very little bit of visibility of the glass guardrail and one of the mechanical units. And then to finish up, we have a proposed rendering for you showing the overall proposed project, including not only the rooftop work, but the various modifications for code and egress at the facades, as well as the repair work. So happy to answer any questions you may have and go back to anything if you'd like more clarification. And again, we have Cass and Tim also available to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. That was a very thorough presentation. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak? I don't see anything yet, but I don't. Okay, so let's go to the committee and we'll go maybe reverse order this time.
Marco?
Thank you, Anthony. I have a question. Do you know what is the distance from the Madison Avenue door to the corner and from the corner to the proposed new second Luis Rodriguez?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So you're asking about the distance from the Madison Avenue door to the corner and then the distance from the corner to the new egress door?
Yes.
Oh, Cass, you're muted.
I think if you have a floor plan, it will be easier.
I was just suggesting maybe Tim provide us with that dimension
Yeah,
Well,
Tim,
we
if
go
you
on to
could.
another question, because I think
Yeah,
he's
that's
going to be
fine. I was
best to
gonna say,
answer
I
that.
unfortunately don't have a floor plan with those
okay.
distances to mention, but we can absolutely look for that for you while we're continuing to
The
talk.
idea basically, I know, I understand you try to comply, but to comply, you really, really has to comply. And that dimension is telling me if you comply or not, even though that I'm not going to judge in that direction. My direction is what you're proposing right now. And I think your proposal to enlarge one window, I think is fine. The door is perfectly fine. To maintain the double hang windows is perfectly fine, 12/12. And wood, I think is perfectly fine. The balcony doors, I think looks perfectly fine. Yeah, the fence on the roof, yeah, very smart move. You put glass and then you maintain the existing without touching the landmark, the historical fence. The replacement of the entrance door, I think you make a very good point, and I think it's perfectly fine. And I think that's pretty much. I think the only situation is you mentioned about the sustainability. I don't think that you reach that level. But again, I'm not going to judge for that part, because once you have so many panels, it's more likely to have more leaks. And there are more leaks, the less compliance with the energy code. Yeah. But that's not the issue right here. But I just let you know that these elements that you describe, I think is not in compliance, but the perception and the way that you present it to us, I think is reasonable, and I think I'm going to support this application. But I will still need to have the information between the districts. Please, thank you.
Sure, and Tim, feel free to jump in once you.
I just got it. The distance from the center of the door to the corner of the building is 28 feet on both sides.
Oh,
it's the same
you
dimension.
comply. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
it might be just worth noting on the windows. It's a good point about the multi-light windows, but the way these windows are detailed, it's actually a single light of glazing with an applied grid and a spacer bar between, so it reads like a divided light, but it actually
You mimic
performs.
Yes. Okay,
Right,
yeah,
right.
I got it. Okay, I think it make less more sustainable. Thank you so
Precisely.
much.
Thank you.
Jane?
Thank you. I'm in awe of Julie for being able to supply such detail for so many parts of this exquisite building. And I was all for everything until I heard the word applied mutton. So I want to hear what everyone else has to say, because I'm really not in favor of applied muttons on this beautiful building. Thank you.
John?
I think it looks great, and I really don't have any questions.
Sarah stepped out for some time, so Alita.
Hi, thank you for that comprehensive presentation. I walk by that building a lot. I like to walk down Madison Avenue, and it is just so different from what's around it that it's a joy to see. I'm tending to agree with Jane, but you say that it won't read any different to have applied muttons, but it's come up in the context of other buildings. About the roof again, and I'm sorry, I have trouble with the roof. It's a bunch of beige boxes up there that so detract for me from the building. My colleagues don't seem to have any trouble with it, but they just keep looking like big boxes. Maybe it reads differently from the street and they won't be quite as large. From one of the earlier I guess renderings you had, they just look like they're almost the height of the building. They looked so disproportionate, but I suspect I'm wrong about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually did, since you were the second person to bring up the applied muttons, I did just want to clarify that, not only is this a typical detail that we do see when, we do window replacement on historic buildings, but it is something actually that staff can often approve. And again, with the spacer bars, the intent is that it really does look like a true divided light, but in particular, in order to meet the energy code regulations and those sustainability goals, it's really necessary to have that single plane of double glazed glass and not many individual lights. So that's really what is, driving this, and to be able to choose a window system that will actually meet all of those requirements.
And the door is a dramatic improvement over that 1980s or 90s door. It looks great, and the elegance of it certainly goes with the style of the building. I just have a question. Why can't mechanicals on a building like this go in the basement?
Tim, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, a large part of the mechanical, it needs access to outside air. So for both intake and exhaust, and that's both functionally and code oriented. But also the basement, we intend to have program down there as well. But mostly it has a lot to do with fresh air requirements for the building.
Well, just thinking, and thank you for that explanation. I get it. Just wondering, this is so out of the realm of what anyone tries to do, but rather than disguise it when they're not really disguised, maybe in keeping with what people are saying about the whimsy on the previous application, which I wasn't crazy about, is to do something different with those boxes, because they still look like boxes, and to do some kind of artwork or something, or plantings or pictures of plants or something up there, rather than disguise something which is not disguisable. Anyway, just throwing it out there, but thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you. Excellent presentation. What is the proposed use?
Sure. Yeah. Apologies that I didn't go into those
You
details.
can't titillate us like that and then not mention it.
Sure. Yeah. So as I noted, so the idea behind the project is that this will be an adaptive reuse. So the building will be utilized as a meeting space and a center for clients, customers, and employees. And that's also going to include some food and beverage use as well.
So does that mean that it remains in the hands of the bank?
Yes, JP Morgan Chase will remain as the owner, yes.
Okay, and they're using it for their own
new use.
Commercial business reasons. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Question I have, so that extra egress is required because you're changing the use of the building?
Correct.
Okay.
That first floor currently just has one means of egress, which isn't very safe. So codes require two, and that's our proposal to make it a safer place.
So you're getting a different certificate of occupancy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The bulkhead, the stuff on the roof, the elevator and stair. In one of your other slides, it shows that it comes right up to the window sill of the building behind it on 64th Street. And yeah, have you consulted with that? Yeah, this image on the right shows it clearly. It almost looks like it may even impinge on that. Have you been in touch with your neighbors in that building?
We have not discussed directly with the neighbor at this point. We've made sure that we do not encroach on the windows. Those are lot line windows, and you can see the building to the south side has already closed up those windows. It's also worth noting that both buildings are a commercial or office use. They're not residential. They're not apartments. But we have no intention of impeding on their windows. Even though if in another scenario we could actually build taller and block the windows, but we have no intention of doing that and impeding on a neighbor's window.
How much did you increase the size of that structure from what it was in the existing image on the left? How much higher is it?
The existing bulkhead height is 7'2", and the proposed, it's staggered, as you can see. So the eastern section, which needs to include the eastern section, is a little higher. So the section that's pulled off of the adjacent building, that's going to be 10'8". The western section that's closest to the adjacent building is 9'8". So it's a full foot lower.
And that was the dimension that you felt you had to have. Can't diminish it.
Correct. We're replacing there's that existing bulkhead is there because there's a stair there. It's an existing non-conforming stair. It's undersized. So it's part of our proposal. We will replace that stair to be code compliant, to make sure it arrives at the roof level. Currently it arrives and you have to step up at the door, which is also an unsafe condition. So that accounts for that slight rise that you're picking up on below the window line. But it's all us making sure we're bringing everything up to proper code, since the age of the building predates a lot of the safety measures.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Gail?
Michelle actually asked a lot of my questions. I do have one. What was the rationale about removing the wood entrance surround and replacing it with marble akin to the marble that is elsewhere in the building, if the wood surround was the original component?
Mm-hmm. Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, so the change to marble is really intended to be, it's an upgrade for the new use, and to tie the surround in with the other marble elements of the building.
And the second portion of that is the front door currently has a step up into it, which isn't ADA accessible. So we need to lower that threshold, which creates a gap at the bottom. In replacing it, we can make sure that it's a nice seamless installation without added on pieces to cover unsightly gaps.
Thank you. No other questions.
Elizabeth?
I think you've done an excellent job here. I've never seen, but except in pictures, the double glazing with the strip in the muntins on either side and the strip in the middle. I hope it looks like an ordinary 6/6 or 8/8 wood window. But I see why you're using it. I'm not crazy about changing the woods around to marble. I think marble wood is really what is normally used on buildings of this age and type. I think it's a lovely building, but I think you've done a good enough job, and I will support it.
Kimberly?
For such a thorough presentation. I don't have any further questions, and based on the comments I'm hearing, I think I can accept this and vote for this application. So thank you.
Okay, before David.
We have to go back to Sarah.
Oh, okay.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I think all of my questions have already been asked. I really love this building, and every time I walk by it, it's like a little surprise house. And so I really appreciate the care that is going into the renovation. And I hear Elizabeth's point about the marble, but I think that overall that this was a very thoughtful job. And so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Before David, maybe we have three committee members who also have their hands up. Jane, then Marco, then Michelle.
I just want to point out, living sort of catty corner to the restoration of the Colonial Dames house, which is in many ways, this property reminds me of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these words that get thrown around like window system, and it will present as true divided lights. It's not true. It's just less expensive for the owner not to really do the restored windows in kind, and using applied buttons on the inside will not present as a true divided light. So I just want to tell you that I'll probably support the application, But I really feel that it's detrimental to the glory of this building to use applied mullions on the inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And then Marco, and then Michelle.
Oh, I'm going to be very quick, and I'm going to support the application. The situation is about the mechanicals. One question, is this a package system that you provide heating, cooling, and ventilation? This is a question. Yes?
The system is split. There are a couple different pieces of equipment up there. Each one has its own function, whether that's makeup air or a condenser or exhaust. So there are several pieces of equipment up there. Sort of each one has a dedicated function.
But that's basically, you said that it's a split system. Is that correct?
No, it's not a split system. There's makeup air. There's a VRF system. There's a few different things going on just to support.
Yeah, you need the ventilation. Yes. The only situation I strongly recommend that you should. There are very beautiful cladding on this kind of mechanicals that they can dissimulate the bulk and dissimulate the aggressiveness of this metal bulk on the roof. I think that's my comment, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. Michelle, you had an additional question or comment.
Yeah, is there any question that you're going to use this as an event space?
That we actually can't answer right now, but we'd be happy to pass your question on to our client and have them follow up. But we don't have any other information.
Allow that?
We can't speak to what the C of O will include at this time, other than the meeting space.
I don't know how we're going to serve that tonight. It's not really appropriate for the landmarks committee anyway. But I'm suspicious about that. We've been burned before in this area. Anyway, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. And we'll, like I said, happy to follow up with our client regarding your concern and
okay, great.
Have them follow
let
up.
us know. That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. David?
I just have two comments. Number one, I just would like to think that you've done the very best you can in terms of how much rooftop equipment is needed, because that really should be absolutely minimized. And I understand how you've tried to disguise it, and it looks like it's probably towards the minimum, but I would like to think that your engineers really did the right job there and that you're satisfied that they did the minimum, that's the minimum on the roof.
Yes, that's an accurate statement.
So if you're satisfied, I'll go along with it. But there are varieties of ways of doing mechanicals. The other thing I'd like to say is, in all deference to Jane and others who are concerned about the window system, no matter how you cut the cake, you're never going to get applied. You're never going to get single glazing as a single glazing look to a double glazed window. And as long as the interior bars between the two pieces of glass are done properly with the applied muntins, it's going to be almost imperceptible between having two layers of glass individually glazed versus one layer of glass with the muntins on the outside. And I've had to face this problem a number of times as a restoration architect. And I think the name of the game is to see to it that it's well done so that it looks as close to what you would like to see in terms of a single pane of glass. But once it's a double pane of glass, there's no way of achieving the look of a single pane. So I think as long as you do it well, we just have to accept that the applied muntins and the double glazing is the thing that has to be done in this day and age. Anyway, that's my comments.
Thank you, David. I think you've done a lovely job. I agree with David about the mechanicals. I do have a question. If looking at the original photo, there are these little finials at the corners of the Juliet balcony, and they've disappeared over time. I'm just wondering why you're not bringing them back.
That's a great question. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We are absolutely happy to pass that feedback on to the team so that they can consider it during the facade repair scope development. That part of the project is still continuing to be developed, largely because it is being reviewed at the staff level, but we'll certainly pass that on, and thank you for that information.
The base of them, if you look closely at the photos, the base of them is still sort of there on the Juliet balcony. You have to look really closely. Start zooming, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Them, and they're swell. Anyway, okay.
It's a good eye.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, David. Second? Jane seconds.
Second.
So, and Marco seconds. So let's call the roll.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everyone. Marco?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes, but I'm a little worried.
Gail?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
So motion is approved unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you all
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And the next application, 53 East 77th Street, Upper East High Historic District, Studio MDA. A modified Neo-Spanish Renaissance building designed by Henry Rutgers Marshall and constructed in 1901, with an alteration to the original Beaux-Arts building to the above style in 1926. Application is to restore the primary facade to its 1901 appearance, expand the existing penthouse floor forward, construct a rear yard addition, modify secondary facade window openings, and replace windows. And is the architect here?
I'm here.
Yes, good evening. Ward Dennis with Higgins Quays Barth and Partners, and I'm joined by Marcus Stepshansky from Studio MDA and his colleagues Andres Balas and Karen Bao, and Jonathan Taylor from my office, and Frank Haftel, who is the owner's representative. So the project, as David just mentioned, is 53 East 77th Street. The proposal is to rehabilitate it as a gallery. The existing building is fully commercial throughout, so we're going from one commercial use to another. The rendering that you see here is the proposed appearance of the building after renovation. It was constructed in 1901 in this Beaux-Arts style, and then significantly altered in the 1920s to its current style, which you will see as we go through the slides. Next, please, Karen. So we are located at the very northwest corner of the district. We're actually on 77th Street. We're the last building on this block within the district. The building immediately to our west is outside. And then next, please. Next. So our building was constructed in 1901. You can see it in the 1902 map highlighted in yellow. Shortly thereafter, the building next door was constructed. Historically, the block was largely row houses, but very quickly in the 1910s to 1920s, converted over to larger buildings, including the Finch School which later became the Lenox School on both 77th and 78th Street, connecting through the block and larger apartment buildings. The end effect in 2024 is that this block really does not have the traditional donut that you see at the center of a lot of lots. As mentioned, we are proposing a one-story rear extension at the ground floor level. Next, please. So this is a view of the building on the left in 1901 as it was completed. The building was constructed for Paul Lester Ford, who was a popular novelist at the turn of the century. Constructed in the Beaux-Arts style with a limestone base, the two paired entries at the base of the building. Notably, the limestone returns onto the west facade, the left in this photo, so that both the front facade on 77th Street and the side facade facing onto the alleyway are finished facades. And the upper parts of the building are brick with limestone trim and a limestone balustrade at top. On the right, you can see a detail of the original building entry. It was a recessed entry, so you walked up a series of steps before you got to the door. And then the right-hand entry, the east entry that you can see behind the lamppost there, was a carriageway. So those are sort of carriage house doors. Next, please. And this is just a view of the building only a year or so later, but the building immediately to our right had been completed by that time. And again in 1903 on the right. So the two buildings made a very nice pair of handsome Beaux-Arts buildings on the block. Next, please. This is the 1940 tax photo on the left and a 1980 tax photo on the right of the 1927 building. Paul Ford actually only lived in his building for about a year. Tragically, he was murdered by his brother in his house in 1902. The building between 1902 and 1925 changed hands a number of times. And in 1925, it was purchased by Joseph and Esther Kerrigan, who were art collectors. The Kerrigans completely redid the building inside and out, really lavishing a lot of attention and money on the interior of the building. They had a designer by the name of Leonard Locke and an architect by the name of Paul Hunt, and completely redid the interior of the building in the Spanish Renaissance style. The exterior of the building was designed by an architect by the name of Pleasance Pennington. And I think you can see from even these historic photos that the attention that was lavished on the interior, not as much attention was lavished on the exterior. But they did remove all of the limestone at the base of the building and the limestone trim on the upper parts of the building. Most of the brick masonry that you see above the second floor in the current building is the historic 1901 brick masonry. Next, please. Marshall did construct one other building in the Upper East Side Historic District. That building too was later redone. And notably on the designation report entry for the East 63rd Street building, it references the East 77th Street building and talks about it falling victim to the same practice. So I think while the 63rd Street building has a lot of coherence and high design, the 77th Street building on the exterior we think is much less so. Next, please. Pleasance Pennington was largely an apartment architect, but he did do a number of row houses, including another one here also on 63rd Street that was converted from a neo-Grec row house into a neoclassical row house. And in 2004, the Landmarks Commission did approve converting this building back to its original 1880s design. So there are precedents for taking buildings that were reworked at one point and restoring them back, or next, please. And also for refacing them in modern facades. And these are just two examples also from the Upper East Side Historic District that were approved by Landmarks. East 68th Street on the left and East 63rd Street on the right. Both were buildings that had style designations in the designation report and were allowed to be altered. The East 63rd Street one on the right rather significantly. Notably, we are proposing to restore our building back to a documented period in history, the 1901 design. Next, please. So I'll just take you through some photos of the existing facade. These are the views along 77th Street, starting at the east on the left and moving to the west on the right. You can see that the base of the building has a different brick pattern than the other floors. That's where the limestone was removed. You can also see those ghosts above the third floor windows and the fourth floor windows, and on the side of the building in the right-hand photos, where windows and limestone trim were removed. Next, please. And here are some details. Most of the brick above the second floor, what we're looking at here with these alternating headers and stretchers, the over-fired headers and the red stretchers, this is all original brick to the 1901 building. Some of it was infilled in the 1920s, but most of it is in situ original brick. Next, please. At the base of the building, they used a very different brick, these sort of oversized square bricks with header courses in between. The pointing does appear to be part of the original. We don't believe that this building was repointed. They just did a not very good job with the pointing in the 1920s. The doorway is part of the 1920s alteration. The canopy over was approved by Landmarks in 2012. Next. And then moving around to the side of the building, most of the brick masonry on the side of the building, which is exposed over the alleyway, is from the 1901 original building. The notable exceptions being the bay window, which was refaced in 1927 and had this double height leaded glass window installed. And then the penthouse that you can see at the roof, which was also installed as part of the 1927 renovation. The string course that you see on the front of the building returning onto the side, and then that upper cornice, which is limestone, those are also part of the 1901 original construction. Next, please. And some additional details, the bay window on the right, and then this new window on the bottom left that was installed and approved in 2012. And then a detail at the top of that egg and dart molding from 1901. Next. And then the penthouse at the roof, constructed again in 1927 with the same sort of slate roof, pitched roof, and decorative brickwork. Plain brick on the rear facade at the top left. The bump out that you see in the foreground behind all these potted plants is the existing elevator override. We are proposing to extend the penthouse forward and shift the elevator back, so there will be a new elevator, but the override will be minimal. Next, please. And this is just a study we did of the facade, showing in red the elements that were added in 1927 or taken away in 1927, and in gray tone the elements that are original to the 1901 building. And more than half of the brick masonry on the building is original to the 1901 renovation. They did not remove a lot, unlike on the interior, where they gutted the building and completely redid the interior. They really were doing bits and pieces on the exterior, adding shed roofs, changing the windows, obviously, and removing the limestone decoration in certain places, but not every place. So there is a substantial amount of the 1901 building that still remains on this 1927 facade. Next, please. So moving around to the back of the building, the rear facade below the top floor, which is the penthouse addition, is original to the 1901. They did not do any changes here. As I mentioned, we are proposing a one-story rear extension that will go up to about where you see that I-beam going across at the second floor. And then on the floor above, there are decorative stained glass windows, which we'll see another view of in a moment. Those are proposed to remain. Next, please. And this is a view. This was the music room for the Kerrigans in the 1927 renovation. We have some plain leaded glass windows on other floors, but these windows at the third floor music room are really special. And ironically, one of the few things that remains from the 1927 renovation at the interior. In the late 90s, the building was purchased and fully gutted out. Chris Gray actually wrote an article about that work in 1998. So these leaded glass windows with their decorative figures and sort of remnant elements scattered throughout do remain from that 1927, and we are proposing to keep that. And this was also something that we had conversations with Landmark staff about, and they encouraged us to keep this as well. Next, please. These are views in our rear yard, looking to the east on the left and to the west on the right. You can see that very much our rear yard, we are hemmed in by other buildings, especially the white brick apartment building to our west. Next, please. And then detail of the block plan showing the different building heights encroaching into the donut. Notably, there are a number of very large buildings at the center of the block that extend into the donut. So effectively, there is very little green space in the back. And we are at the bottom left there proposing that one-story extension, which would set off from the one-story apartment immediately to our rear. Next, please. And then just some views from our roof looking down. The one on the left looking due north to that low section of the white brick apartment building, and then to the right looking to the east. You can see what was the Lenox School with their sky bridge going across, and sort of how much stuff there is in the middle of the block. Next, please. So I will hand it over to Marcus, but this series shows you the 1901 design on the left, the 1927 modifications in the center, and then our proposal on the right. Very much we are proposing to fully restore with some very, very minor modifications, concessions for current uses, the 1901 facade. So Marcus, please.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Ward. And thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, sorry, this is so late. We actually have a much longer presentation where we compressed it a little, so make sure everybody gets to bed soon. We have presented before to CB8, and I'm excited to be back here presenting to you this what I think is an incredibly beautiful building. And we were very lucky to find some really high resolution pictures of the building that allowed us to zoom into great detail to restore some of the details that the building originally had in 1902. Just quickly to the use of the building, as Ward mentioned, this is going to be a single use for a gallery and foundation. This is a multi-generational family that has been collecting artwork and has a collection of great modern masters, which I think explains their passion and excitement for this building and for this project. So the intention really is to bring the building back to its original beauty in a restorative program. And this includes every single detail from the limestone details, which I will talk more into detail, to finding the bricks that were used for the penthouse edition, and including the window program that we have in place and the work on the balconies and the ironwork. Next. The idea is basically to restore the building as closely as we could to the originals, and what we are adding is a penthouse on the top. I will get to that more in detail and show you the mock-up that was done. This is to include the elevator to be allowed to go to the top floor with allowing ADA access to all of the floors, reducing the mechanical systems on the roof by using very efficient systems and having some equipment in the basement, and creating an addition in the back that will allow the gallery to show pieces ranging from big sculptures, for example, caulders, that then can be brought into the building. But this is all as of right. But we decided to step back to the neighbors in the back to allow light and air, and we decided to step back on the side as well so that we don't have to block out any windows. Next. The primary facade, you can see, as Ward explained, actually there's a lot of the existing brick still there. It had been covered up on the top, and it had been changed. The limestone has been removed from the ground floor. So we're restoring the ground back to what it originally had, which is the two entrances as a limestone facade, and with an Indiana limestone, of course. Next. And on the west elevation, we are, you can see, adding the 12 feet to the penthouse. We are also changing the brick back to match the original brick. We're changing some of the fenestration to give it a more uniform look. And we are also bringing back the bay window that originally had some beautiful windows, which were part of what then led to the library, which is the tragic space of the library, but that's a whole nother story. The height of the building is not changing. We're keeping the height, the overall height of the building as it is. Next. The back facade is going to get cleaned up. There's a big shaft which was used for a restaurant use at the time. All the dunnage you see, I think, is also part of what was needed at the time for the restaurant. All of that is going to get cleaned out. We are removing the fire stair, which we will not need because now it will become a single-use building. Next. In section, you can see that we are having the addition in the back. We are having the bulkhead addition by 12 feet towards the front, which we'll show you in the mock-up pictures. We are not adding to the basement. There's no excavation work planned at all. We're keeping the slab as it is and reconfiguring the floor in the back. Next. On the penthouse, now in more detail, you can see the addition of the penthouse, which is done again with the same brick. But we are also adding details at the windows of window lintels. We are adding limestone details. And but the idea really is that it is coherent with the overall appearance of the building. Next. This is a picture of the mock-up. So on the right, you see that you don't see the mock-up. This is from across the street at the primary elevation. On the left is a rendering that we did showing the changed appearance of the building. Next. This is a corner view showing the mock-up on the right and the rendering on the left. We'll talk more about the two entrance doors in a minute. Next. Next. And this is as you're going back onto Madison. So you start, because of the open corner and the setback to the parking garage, you see the back. You won't see the addition in the back, but you see portions of the extension on the penthouse. Next. 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 And then from the back, because this is open and visible from 78th Street, there is no visibility of the mock-up, as you can see. What will change on this elevation is that we will clean up the penthouse brickwork. We will remove the fire stair. We will remove the venting of the former restaurant. Next. And in detail, and this was for us incredibly exciting, was really the forensic work we did with the help of Ward and Dennis and Jonathan Taylor. We found literally the coins that were shown at the entrance of the doors, and the history of the coins, which is incredibly exciting and interesting. Probably not so interesting at 9:30 at night for you, but incredibly interesting. And I would love to send this to you. And this goes back to the history, I think, of the owners who came from Massachusetts, which is the coin you see over the main entrance. The main entrance used to have a stair, so we're changing that to become a glass door next, or metal door with glass, I should say. And this is going to be our main entrance. The design of the glass door is inspired by a picture we found of the interior glazing of the bay window, which is a floral design, almost an explosion of flowers on top that we basically took as an interpretation for our entrance door. Next. The windows, sorry, the secondary entrance, which is our service entrance, used to be a carriage door. This we're replacing to be exactly how it was originally. I should mention that the windows in the front facade, principal facade, will be wood windows, exactly like we found them in the photographs, historic photographs. The side windows will be metal windows. Next. And yeah, all the details. And we have, I had 30 more pages for you, which I'm not going to show you, but this is going to be all the details, basically, of how we plan to restore the building very carefully and very detailed, with all of the material that we were luckily able to find on this building. And with that, I can answer any questions with regards to the detailing or the details of the project. Thank you.
Thank you for a very thorough and quick presentation. But as quick as it was, I think it was comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, let's see if there's anybody from the public.
No, I don't see anyone from the public. No.
Okay, so let's go to the committee, starting at the beginning of the alphabet. Elizabeth.
Thank you very much for the speed. Those of us who are hungry are very grateful. I think that you've done it. It's an excellent objective, and you've made it. The original building was beautiful. It was I would say, desecrated, and anything would be better than what was there. But I think going back as far as you have to the original, you've done it very well, and I will support this.
Gail?
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really commend you for your thoroughness in identifying all of the 1901 historic elements. I did have one question. You said that the new front door is going to be metal with glass. Was the original door metal or was it wood?
It's hard
we don't
go ahead.
know. Yeah. So you can see on this photo on the bottom, the original door was actually just an open doorway, and you walked up a series of steps to where the door was. So what is hiding back in that shadow, we don't know, and we don't have original plans to say what it was. But there was historically in 1901, there was no door at the street facade. It was set in about 10 feet.
Okay. And then you said that the front windows are going to be wood. The side windows will be metal. Were those windows also metal in the past, or did you just determine that that might be more practical?
I should clarify that the windows on the corner, which will be matching the window and style of the front elevation, will also be wood. So this row of 2, 4, 6, 8 windows that you see will also be wood. And then as you go to really what is the side elevation, this will be metal.
And then there'll be 1/1 like the originals.
Correct. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Those were my questions.
Michelle?
Yeah, beautiful restoration. I commend you. And it was a great presentation. I even don't mind the slight visibility of the penthouse because it looks in keeping with the rest of the building. What is the reason for going to metal on the side facade?
What, do you want to take this or?
Well, your first two rows on
Yeah.
the side, up and down, those 8 windows are wood. The front facade is wood. I'm just asking why you moved to a metal window on the rest of the side facade.
Yeah, I think this is more kind of a conversation we had with our client. I think it has to do with the fact that there really are secondary windows. As such, to basically go to the expense of a wood window on the secondary facade, we didn't think of the client, we didn't think it would be necessary to do that.
And how about on the penthouse?
And I would just,
Yeah.
I would just say too that the LPC staff rules would allow aluminum windows on those secondary elevations.
Yeah. What about on the penthouse? What are
The
the
same,
windows?
they would be.
Same. Yeah.
Same meaning metal or same meaning
Metal.
wood?
Metal.
Even on the front facade of the penthouse because it's not visible?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All in all, it's a beautiful job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alita?
Thank you. I'll just echo my colleagues in saying well done for the presentation and applause to the owners for taking this on and paying so much attention to restoring the architectural details and for the excitement. I don't know if it's solely yours, but also for the owners for those tiny architectural details like the coins. I love that round window on the side. It's beautiful. As chair of the CB8 Arts Committee, I have to say yay to bringing a gallery into the community and a foundation that's superb. My only comment is really about the rear yard extension. It is it's a big expanse of stucco without any kind of ornamentation or anything to make it as special as the rest of the building. So I have to say I'm not crazy about that. But I think the job on the rest of the building, I suppose, makes, well, it is weightier and more significant than in the back. I just would have liked to have seen something that's more in line with the beautiful attention to detail on the rest of the building. And as Michelle said, I don't object to the penthouse because it fits and it goes well. So thank you very much. And I'm really excited to have another gallery in the area.
Thank you for your comment.
The family won't be living there. It'll just be
No.
offices.
No,
Okay.
just commercial.
Yeah. But thank you for your comments and well noted.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I don't have any additional questions. I am just blown away by the depth of the work and the enthusiasm in doing this restoration. It's an enthusiastic restoration. So thank you. And perhaps at another time we'll get to hear more about the coins.
Good.
I will say Marcus, took out the last third of the presentation, which is all the details that he and Karen and Andres have been working on that really are highly detailed, even at this early stage in the game. So it's been exciting.
John?
I think it's amazing what you've done in restoring the look of the original building to what you're going to do here. It's just amazing, and I think it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane?
Yes, you did an amazing job, and I really appreciated you mentioning Christopher Gray and his article about the leaded windows with the designs embedded in them. Too bad he isn't still alive to write about the whimsy that you're returning with the use of the coins and those medallions. I just want to add that I actually like the roof overhang. It sort of is so different in the 1927 iteration. Thank you.
Marco?
Thank you. Well done. I think the restoration is perfectly fine. You remove all the scars that this building suffered at the time when they did that. I think I appreciate that. The only concern that I have, let me ask a quick question. Is this an individual landmark or is a historical building?
It's a contributing building within the district.
Okay, so you must be compliant with the with the energy code. So because no exempt, all the buildings are no exempt except those that declare as an individual landmarks. I'm not going to comment in that part, but probably you may come back for that. The other situation is the extension. The extension, you almost eliminate the rear yard. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So the situation is, this is a residential district. I think you are planning to go file for a variance. Is that correct?
No, because it's not a residentially used building, so it is currently used as a gallery. So it's a commercial building, and on a commercial building, as of right, you can build out to the property line on the ground floor.
Well, you cannot increase no more grandfather, period. And that's, you have to ask questions about that. And I think that's pretty much what I'm going to say. But you should investigate that part.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
well
you.
noted. Thank you for the comment.
Kimberly?
So much for such a thorough presentation and a fantastic restoration. No further comments. I just hope that the existing door is salvaged by someone because it is wild. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Anthony and David?
Oh, okay. I almost don't know where to start. I live on 77th Street. I walked by this building countless times. And it occurred to me on looking at your presentation before the meeting, the first thought that struck me, the first question that struck me, and I don't need an answer, it's a rhetorical question, is why not just restore the 1927 alterations to what should have been their original state? In other words, remove the scars. I think the two different bricks on the facade was an ingenious solution in 1927. And I find also, as does Jane, that the overhanging roof is quite charming. And I think, in fact, the building as it is kind of charming. And one of the things that strikes me about this is that, yes, you are restoring the facade to its 1901 appearance. But originally, you walked in that deep entrance on the west side of the building, or west end of the front, and walked up a flight of stairs because the lower floor, the ground floor, was used as a carriageway. You're eliminating that. Now, functionally, you don't need to keep that, but it becomes a question for me that, on the one hand, you're saying this is a meticulous restoration, and on the other hand, the alleyway facade is being altered because there weren't windows at the ground floor on the alleyway side. They were, in fact, a series of windows that stepped up along with the stairs to indicate that staircase that carried you up. I think sometimes there is a kind of desire to recreate an original condition, which may or may not be the best condition. And in fact, there's a kind of a fictitious quality to this kind of restoration, because it really isn't a restoration, it's a reconstruction. Yes, a lot of the brick is the same brick, but the window openings are different. So some of the window openings are different, and you're adding windows. So in a way, to me, it's a kind of fictitious recreation of 1901. And furthermore, one of the things about the penthouse is that it has lots of windows in it. There are lots more windows, it seems to me, on the alley facade than there were before. And while I appreciate I will be accused of inconsistency, this is a building where we actually see the penthouse much more than we would have otherwise. And it's the gap between the two buildings that lets us see it. I will almost undoubtedly be alone, but I will be voting against this.
Thank you, Anthony. In response to that, I would say that you could make either case. And as a pure restoration, I don't think that's really possible. In particular, the entrance, if we're going to keep the ground floor now as a ground floor and not the floor of the carriageway, we're not going to have the steps up. We're not going to have the same kind of experience. And if we look into a dark hole 10 feet deep, which doesn't necessarily have to be dark, but I'm not sure that that's really in this day and age with security issues and those kinds of concerns. I'm not unhappy to see the door brought out to the facade. I also agree with you and Jane that there are some nice things about the building as it happened in 1927, in particular, the overhanging roof. But I don't think that we can pick and choose. I think we have to go in one direction or the other. And they've made the decision to go in the direction of restoration with modifications to the 1901 building to meet today's requirements. And I think from that point of view, it's very well done. And I certainly will support it. So with that, I would like to see whether there's a resolution.
Move to approve as presented.
Gail. Second. Okay, so it's a move to approve. And Kevin, if you'll call the roll, please.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everyone. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Gail?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Anthony?
No.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jane?
No.
Marco?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, let's see. Item 6.
Thank you all for
Thank you very
all your
much.
time this evening.
Yes, thank you for staying up so late. Really appreciate it. And always great to get the comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Okay, our last application is 910 Fifth Avenue, Upper East Side Historic District. This is Dorota Swam. A no-style building designed by Fred French and constructed in 1919. It was actually kind of stylish in 1919, but it was altered from the original Neo-Italian Renaissance style by Sylvian Bean and re-facaded anyway in 1958-59. Application is for an alteration to the South Terrace Bay window. And not to return it to its 1919 state. Is the applicant here?
Yes, I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Can you see me?
No.
Wow.
Yes. No. No, we can't. You are Peter.
Yes, it's Peter. How
Yes.
can I make my
Turn on your camera?
turn on my camera?
Give it a shot. No, now you just disappeared. Oh no, there you are. Try again.
I'm clicking on it. Start the video.
This is interesting.
What's even more important is whether he can share his screen.
I can share my screen. I apologize for this.
Okay,
so
share your screen.
Share my
And we'll
screen.
just imagine.
Well, you haven't missed much.
Oh, you're too modest, I'm sure.
There we go. Okay, so I will not keep you long. It's not. Well, I personally don't consider this very exciting building. Just basic facts. It's located on East Side Historical District. Was originally built in the Neo-Italian Renaissance style, but lost its beautiful appearance since 1958. I'm going to show that slide. When developer decided to add 4 additional floors, he stripped original beautiful stonework and replaced with the brick veneer and aluminum windows. So that's today's view. So that's what we are looking at before. Okay, that's the beautiful building. And now this is the remaining part. So the purpose of this presentation is to seek an approval for our exterior architectural solution for the interior design work, which involves combining 2 floors on this level. So we have 2 floors, 12th floor, which is confined with the old original building, and its 14th floor is addition. So maybe I jump quickly prior to showing the elevation, because elevation doesn't really show much in terms of difference. That's our proposal. And that's the existing part. So maybe to explain the application, I present the view from the bird's view. Okay, so to optimize the interior space, where we have the main living space in this location, it's a living room. I propose in shifting those bay windows, existing bay windows, to the new location and give it more modern, more contemporary, and in my opinion, more in keeping character, instead of having this sort of greenhouse looking with the slope roof, which is, in my opinion, is not really in keeping with the modern architecture, if we can call this building modern. So maybe I explain on the plan what's the reason for it, why we are, okay. So this is the floor below. No, it's an existing floor, 14th floor. And our existing bay windows are here. That's the one. And another one here, okay. The second slide, I'm trying to, in order to create a more ambient space, which is just a primary living space for the entire apartment, I'm trying to gain extra space by adding the sunroom. An additional one here.
Okay, one may ask why not to try to expand somehow this way and forgo that need for the sunroom. Because this building, this floor is a transition floor between old building and new addition. The only possible location for the new staircase is here. So we are completely limited. Plus I have a column. So we're completely limited to expand this towards the north terrace. And so hoping to gain extra space by utilizing existing square footage and give it to the great room, which is a primary space for relatively quiet apartment. Okay. So now I'm going back to this presentation. Okay, here. So we have existing bay window already in this character here on the top. So in my opinion, this new architecture would be more suitable than those sort of greenhouse approach, which is existing. Okay, so this will be the first item. The second item is very simple. We need to change the railing. It's only guided by the fact that the existing railing is not safe. It's claimable, it's quite open. So once we place the furniture on it, it's very easy for the child to jump on the wall and just, we might have some issues. So I show additional slides as well. So this is new over existing. This is not a bay window. It's just a regular window. The dotted line represents greenhouses. This is enclosure for the AC unit. Okay, so that's the new location in the new form. This is new bay window in new form. And that's the railing at the back. Okay. And again, going back to how it presents from the street. Hold on. I want to delete this. So not really visible. I would say that those bay windows are not visible at all because they have a sloped roof. We have a little bit here, a little bit here, one and there, but just a touch. The same from the other view. Okay, so you don't see them at all here. And this is the railing you can see from the side. So that's it for presentation.
Wonderful, thank you. So just to summarize, although you were very clear and fortunately for all of us, very brief, you are removing some, we'll call them greenhouse style additions and replacing them with more rectilinear structures that are the same floor area.
That's correct.
And then you are creating a less, a safer railing in the back portion of the floor.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this?
I just speak for myself. This is actually my unit. And I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to review this for us. For me and my family, I'm sorry that, you guys are up so late doing this, but I have to tell you, it's because of the work that you do that townhouse that was approved right before me is going to be done the way it is. And I think it's amazing. my building is not as pretty as that building, but we're trying to make it as nice as possible.
Yes, yes. Well, unfortunately, as a unit owner, you can't do much about the inside, the outside rather. You can't do much about the outside.
I wish we could put the stone back to the facade. I've been asking many times to the board, but I haven't been approved yet.
Well, we're eager to see you come before us with that particular alteration. So let's go to the committee, and I guess we'll do it in reverse order.
Marco?
Thank you. I think that this application is reasonable. I think it's very sensitive. This is a no-style building. The only thing he does is just relocate the sunrooms, and then to make safer the railing. And I think it's perfectly fine. I'm not going to take more time because it's too late. Thank you.
Jane?
No comment. I'll approve. Thank you.
John?
I will approve also.
Sarah?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Alita?
No comments, I'll approve. Thank you.
Michelle?
I'll approve, but I'm just curious, so I have a question. Was that originally an enclosed terrace?
No,
Well, the
not
one
that
on
I'm
the,
aware of.
Sorry?
Sorry, Peter, please.
like completely enclosed with the roof?
No, on the image on in the lower left.
Lower left.
So that was a terrace that was enclosed, and now you're reversing where the planting, the hothouse, greenhouse, you're reversing the hothouse.
Now let's do it this way. So this is original North Terrace, and
No, I'm talking about the south. I'm talking about the other side. This one I understand, the North Terrace. It's the South Terrace. I just want to know, was that just an open terrace that was enclosed on one side with the greenhouse and on the other side
was open
with like a solarium? Is that what I'm looking at?
Well, those are existing greenhouses on the west side of the terrace.
Yes, that was a terrace, right?
Yeah, there was a terrace. Somebody built over the existing terrace, correct?
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So
Yes.
now you're getting rid of that and you're making it part of the rest of the room, and you're bringing the windows to be flush with the windows that are underneath and above. Is that correct?
That's correct. I just want to clarify on those additions, those greenhouses, that are connected to the interior space, that open, and the floor level travels all the way to the glazing. So there will be no difference in terms of practicality, how those existing bay windows are constructed with those new proposed. Both of them are enlarging interior space.
I understand, but the difference is the glazing is different than the glazing above it and below it.
That's correct. It's completely different architecture. I'm removing the glazing from the top and replacing this with the flat roof. Correct.
Okay, and this is on the 14th floor?
That's on the 14th floor, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Gail?
No questions. I'll approve the application. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I will approve this. To call this building a no-style building is to compliment it. And so I don't have very high standards for what one does on this. This is fine. I'll vote for it.
Kimberly?
No comments. I'll approve.
Okay. Oh, Alita, you have your hand up.
I was just going to propose a resolution to accept the
Excellent.
proposal as is.
Wonderful. Do we have a second?
Second.
From Michelle and Kimberly. So let's go to the vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna unmute everyone. Marco,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
John. John, are you there?
We lost John. Oh, he's here.
Okay, now here I am. Yes.
David,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Alita,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're on to old business. Does anybody have any old business? I'm glad I don't see any hands. Does anybody have any new business? I'm glad I don't see any hands.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Marco.
So we have a move to adjourn, and we have a second.
Seconded?
And I assume we have unanimous vote on that. Thank you all.
Yes.
See you Wednesday night.
Thank you.